to be heard will be to have a discussion of the alternates for the bike path. And we want to let people know that the select board will not be making any decisions tonight. It will be pushed back. We're just because
we didn't get the document.
right, exactly. Yeah, we did not get the formal document. We're glad everybody came to listen to the process that will be talked about. But because without the formal documents and the time to study them, there was no point in making a decision that was not informed. And so we're going to start with, I guess, Stantec, correct?
Sure.
And would you speak your name for the record, please?
Sure. Eric Alling with Stantec. Share my screen here.
Going to take public comments first.
Oh, public to be heard, no. We're going to, Stantec's going to have a presentation because we changed the agenda. So the presentation of the alternatives are going to be first. Public to be heard will be later, but comment of what if you're going here to talk about what he's talking about, that'll be after his presentation. Sorry.
Yeah, I have just a few slides to get through and then we'll have an open discussion with questions and comments. Okay, so we're here tonight to discuss the alternatives for a path along Route 15 corridor to connect the Jericho Corners with the Riverside Village. We came here in February and gave a local concerns meeting. We took that feedback and developed some alternatives, so we're here to present those tonight. Quick agenda of what we'll cover. We'll look over the background of the project and some of the existing conditions. We'll review alternatives, and then the main reason we're here tonight is to gather feedback on the alternatives, and then we'll wrap up by discussing what comes after tonight. So our project areas, I'm sure many know, is from Jericho Corners to Riverside. There was a study that was previously done in 2017. It did identify some alternatives, but it didn't drill down enough into some of the impacts. And we've taken those and done that drilling down. And so we have a better sense of what the scope of these alternatives will be. And that's what we'll show in a couple of slides. So our study's timeline, we began back in November. We gathered some information, looked at that older scoping study, had the public meeting that I mentioned in February. And then we took that input into stakeholder meetings. And then we developed alternatives based on that. And so we're here tonight to present those. Some of what we heard at the last meeting, some of the more recurring themes were for cyclists and pedestrian safety. People were concerned about impacts to private properties. There was also some concerns expressed about truck traffic and high speeds on Vermont 15. Also, there were some privacy concerns given one of the alternatives' proximity to some of the residences. And then also some erosion issues along the rail bed. Most projects work this way. You start in project definition, which is where we are now. Issue or problem is identified and it's studied through a scoping study. If at the end of that process, there's an alternative that comes out that's supported by the community, it can become eligible for funding. And if it secures funding, then it can be designed, detailed designed and then built. Here is a look at existing sidewalk. You can see both in the Riverside Village in the upper right and Jericho Corners in the bottom left. Those yellow lines indicate existing sidewalk, and there's that big missing gap in between, which is the section we're looking at. Just a quick existing project area on some of the areas we're looking at. So we're calling Vermont 15 segment 1 from Griswold to Brown's Trace. That stretch has about 8,500 vehicles per day. Speed limit starts at 35 and works up to 50. It has 11-foot vehicle lanes, 4-foot shoulders, no dedicated bicycle or pedestrian facilities. Segment 2 is from Brown's Trace Road to River Road, and the volume is a little higher there, 10,400 vehicles per day. That one starts at 50 and goes down to 35 as it enters Riverside. Again, 11-foot lanes and 4-foot shoulders. And here's a look at the existing rail bed, which has been unofficially used by some folks in town, and it is going to be part of the cross-country alternative. And it does have some town right-of-way easement on it today. Raceway Road is also going to be part of the off-road alternative. That's got a relatively low volume of 765 vehicles per day, a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. It is 24 feet wide, and most of it is gravel. And then finally, Silly Hill Road is also part of the off-road alignment. Didn't have any traffic volume available, but it's likely low volume, probably lower than Raceway. It's got a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit again, and it is also 24 feet wide, like Raceway, but it is paved. I won't read all this, but our purpose and need is important to this project. It's how the alternatives are measured against each other. So the purpose of the study is to construct improvements that increase safety and mobility of pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit users along this corridor, regardless of age and ability, and to encourage the use of non-motorized modes of transportation. And the needs that feed into that are the desire for an origin destination opportunity, the current lack of connectivity from those two segments I showed earlier. There are shoulders, but they're inadequate for all but the strongest and most confident cyclists. High vehicle speeds up to 50 miles an hour. And there is a lack of marked crossings to get from one side of 15 to the other. And finally, to improve overall bicycle and pedestrian conditions throughout the town. And so with that, we'll jump into alternative one, which is a 10-foot shared use path along the south side of Vermont 15. And if you can see in the lower right, the roadway ends up untouched, and then there would be, whoops, right there. There would be a 5-foot grass strip in most locations and a 10-foot shared use path. And take a closer look at this one. And these are much more detailed than what was sent to the select board prior to the meeting. I apologize that these weren't available at that point, but you'll be able to get a good look at it this evening. We'll zoom in so we don't have to squint here. Okay, starting at Griswold Street, there would be a crosswalk that would connect to the existing sidewalk that heads to Jericho Corners, and then that 10-foot shared use path starts. One thing to note is the green depicts sort of the impact area of this project. We use LiDAR, which is a radar-based like ground mapping, which is not equal to regular ground survey. So keep in mind that the limits shown here are as good as we can get right now, but likely to change once ground survey was developed if this alternative was to go forward. So I'll just walk through the path, and it's a good sense of scale given the properties and parcels around, and I'll point out some of the impacts that we did find as we went through this exercise. So right off the bat, there would be a retaining wall in this section, not a huge one, but it's something important to know. We've got a large tree here that would likely be spared. And then, so I put potential landscaping impacts where they are. We don't know fully yet, just because we're just printing this on an ortho photo, basically. And once ground survey comes through, stuff can be avoided a lot easier. So I just highlighted what we thought might be some impacts to landscaping. In this area, we've got a property that's a little bit closer to the road, so the grass strip gets narrowed and the path kind of moves away from the house a little bit to give it a little more space. I listed a potentially impacted fence here.
Now, there's, by the way, just on another matter, this is that right of way to that piece of property. This is that right of way to that 9 acres. That has something about it, but that's it. This is the only access into that property. Town.
Of the town property?
Yep.
Okay.
Again, some more potential landscaping impacts. You can see the trees sort of close to the road there. It's just tough to tell what's shadow and what's the actual tree from the ortho photo. Another large tree that we think can be avoided. Walking down, it stays pretty typical through here without much impacts beyond the path. A few more potential landscaping impacts. Across this Packard Road. There would be a culvert extension at this location. That's something that would be built into our estimate, would be designed during detail design. And this plan is so big that I have to put it on 2 sheets. I'll let me pull up the other one. It should pick up right where we left off. Yep. Another culvert extension and some potential landscaping impacts. And a nice stretch of little impacts outside of the path. And here we've got another area where we had to make a change. No, I'm sorry, we're coming to that area next. Another potentially impacted fence. And then right here, the properties were again close. So in this case, it went, the grass strip gets removed completely and replaced by a 6-inch curb to separate it from the roadway. And it ends up being an 8-foot path through this section, so a little bit narrower. Just because of the proximity of some of these structures.
Yeah. Could you stop for a second?
Sure.
On Joe and James.
Good question, how you got a curve in front of my driveway?
This was just a model. This is not detailed design. It's to sort of show the, yeah, we wouldn't, that wouldn't happen. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Across Brown's Trace where we need to modify the signal. The pedestrian phase. And again, it fits in pretty nicely along here. And then at the bridge, we opted to go the route of the previous scoping study, and that was to avoid this. This could be up to $1 million pedestrian bridge across here. So we have it on the roadway bridge, which is really wide. So that gives us space for a 6-foot sidewalk and curb, and then a 4-foot shoulder on each side with 11-foot lane. So it still leaves cars plenty of space as well.
What do you mean it's on the roadway bridge?
So the path, you see it curves up towards the roadway,
Right.
and then it would be built onto the existing bridge, and then the center line of the bridge would be shifted to accommodate the vehicles.
And then what's between the bridge? What's between the path and the actual roadway then?
A 6-inch curb, or it could be some sort of a railing system as well. Carrying along until we get into Riverside, and then it crosses to the existing facilities. So that's alternative 1, and I can jump into alternative 2, or we can discuss this one first, however the select board would like to proceed.
So you can't get to Browns River without, if you're a kid coming from the corners, you get close to Browns River, and then you've got to cross on the other side of 15, and then cross back to get to Browns River School.
Yes.
No, I don't think you do, actually. Can I cut in?
Sure, Peter, just announce yourself so that,
Yeah,
Other
Peter
people-
Booth, I'm on Zoom and I live right down here. From that crosswalk, there's a sidewalk that picks up right in front of the Hackney's house right there. I mean, you're a little bit you're by the road for a couple feet, but I would stay on, if I were going to Browns River, I would stay on this side of the road and just walk in front of the Hackney's. There's a sidewalk that begins just about where that crosswalk to the existing Riverside note taps in. Right about there where the hand is, right in there. There's a sidewalk, right there. There's a sidewalk right there.
Okay, thanks, Peter.
And of course, there's another project that's going to extend sidewalk.
all the way over.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it makes sense for people to make comments about this one first.
Sure. And I'm happy to scroll to wherever people would like to see.
So please, state your name for the record and, speak up, because we're gonna need you to speak up.
Yeah, that's all, I live on, 15, one of them houses that make on this temple fence that you. I kind of fencing, I'm real smart, but you talked about 2 culverts that have to be extended to the south side of 15. And all the businesses are on the north side of 15, so that's going to cause people to cross from this walkway to Kate's, Dollar General, Ace Hardware, things like that. Seems to me, if you crossed by the bank where you have Silly Hill or right there, you could stay on the north side all the way down and avoid a whole bunch of expenses. You still, and you have less houses impacted if you're on the north side than you are the south side, at least in that section. And even going back all the way to the start of the thing, it looked like a lot of the houses off 15 set back off 15 further on the north side than you do the south side. So you may have less impact with your trees and landscaping and so forth.
Yeah, the previous study did look at both sides of the road, and I believe that in some part, those business accesses were part of the concern with more traffic going across the sidewalk. And early on in the process, we decided we were going to stick to the south side for this study and compare it to that cross-country alternative.
Okay, just seemed like it made a lot more sense to be on the north side today.
Please state your name for the record.
Dale Johnson, I'm over at 118, at the start of the project here as well, but I was curious why the south side was looked at, was what the preference was or what the justifications were for that was, because I agree with what his comments were about, it seemed like the other side was a lot less housing on our side, close to the sidewalk that would have privacy impacts, other impacts. I also had questions about, you mentioned a retaining wall on our property and other properties along that section, what does that look like?
They can look like a lot of things. It's not a very high retaining wall, but it would be just something to sort of, there's some ledge there. You know, that ledge would have to be cut into, and then some sort of a stone retaining wall or probably stone or concrete would be put in there just to sort of hold that back and give the space for the sidewalk.
What kind of process would that cutting on the ledge look like?
That's a good question. I can get an answer back to the select board. I don't know if it could be removed with an excavator, or I doubt they'd have to blast it, but probably some sort of hammer attachment to an excavator.
That's a concern about our foundation, our neighbor's foundation in that regard.
Sure.
And is there a culvert noted in your plan at that location near our driveway? Because there's a crossing culvert right there. And I know that the neighbors across the street had a lot of drainage issues and concerns that we in that area. So I don't know if that's in your plan.
It's not in this plan, but it's addressed in the evaluation matrix I'm going to show later. We do recognize that there will be drainage impacts and some ditches and culverts are going to need to be moved, replaced. That's something that happens more during detail design when we've got the ground survey and we can tell exactly what the water's doing. But yes, the goal would be to make drainage situation better and never worse. And that would all be kind of hashed out during detailed design. But yeah, culverts are generally part of a project like this.
And again, what was the reason for the south side of the study?
It was the increased traffic volume across the sidewalk there was a concern listed by the last one. And so early on, we decided to just focus on the south side because it seems less problematic based on that previous study.
Please state your, I know Joe, but.
Can I just, before you talk, we just got a comment on the Zoom, someone asking for people to actually approach the mics before they speak, so can we do that, because the people on the Zoom aren't able to hear?
Okay.
Okay, yeah, we did want to interfere with
Sorry.
Eric, but. So Joe, you want to come up? You're going to get to be the first one to have to come up.
I don't know that there's so many people here.
I know,
Is this okay? Just right
Sure.
over here.
why
So,
not?
Just a couple questions, or one comment, a couple questions. First comment is, again, I've submitted written documentation
Right.
about our concerns and so on with our old house, foundation well, and whatever. But also a couple questions. Where do we stand with V-Trans in the overview of this? Some of the scoping studies that are not scoping studies, some of the studies that we had down in Jericho by RSG in 2015 definitely highlighted that pass along this route and some other routes in Jericho. We weren't there yet in infrastructure need and so on. The 2015 was pretty clear that we weren't there for, we didn't meet the need or have the facilities to justify a path along those. So the 2015 report on transportation and bike by RSG for the town didn't hit, we were there yet. So my question is, has V-Trans been contacted and what's their thoughts on trying to make this work? And has the situation changed since 2015 in regards to capacity and so on? Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think one thing that I can say to that is that it's a competitive grant program. So we're not going to get an answer as to whether they would fund it. It's really part of the grant program. Right, is that what we're thinking?
Yeah, they're not directly involved. This project is through the Regional Planning Commission, not through V-Trans. So they would look at the completed study along with the previous studies, and that would go into the grant application. And that would be their involvement at that point, would be reviewing the grant, whether they would fund it or not.
Okay, but again, when I bring this about V-Trans, we talk about a railing over a bridge. Well, V-Trans plows that road. I don't believe they're going on a railing and trying to plow around that. We have a curved sections that are curved and uncurved. How is V-Trans going to handle that? Or is maintenance going to be an issue? So again, we move as we say we want this path or we want to go here, but there's quite a bit of design criteria that affects a state highway. And I would think that the state would be involved very early before we keep moving forward without any kind of input from the state that this will work, this will work, this will work. Because if they come back with information that says the railing won't work, the curb doesn't work, drainage here won't work, we have to procure easements here. V-Trans may say, you gotta find another path, it won't work. So that's just, again, I don't know how they fit in and what section they have their say in this.
Yeah, so V-Trans does fund certain scoping studies, they don't, so there's not really direct involvement. The project team can certainly make them aware of what we're proposing, and I think that's actually a great idea. So that's something we can pursue after this meeting is setting up some sort of situation with them where they can at least have some feedback on what we're proposing for Route 15.
Madam Chair, I propose that instead of asking people to come up, maybe we could repeat the question back. Because I just think it's going to be logistically impossible to get everyone.
Well, that's probably
Yeah.
true. Yeah, I mean, so,
No, I've been asking for one for a year.
There's
Yeah.
one above people, but it's
it's supposed to
Yeah,
work.
we
not
thought
adequate.
that
It's
was
right there above
working
your
well
head.
enough.
Yell towards that mic up there or towards the front and they'll be fine.
John, can you summarize the question in the chat?
Oh, boy.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Hey, this is Peter Booth, who's on Zoom right now, and just FYI, when people just speak loudly and clearly in the audience, the gentleman in the blue who was just talking from his seat, you could hear him completely fine. So if you just speak loudly and clearly and kind of project your voice, I think it's really fine.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah. All right, any other questions on this
I'm not sure
particular?
you can see.
Oh, I can see way back there. Now you're really gonna need to yell.
Okay, I'm Jane Flynn and watch out. I just want to make sure, I know that he sent a letter out to you guys.
Yes,
But I want to make sure the Stantec guy knows that our well that we drink from and use every day is only 19 feet away from the road. And there's a hand dug well even closer to the road
wow.
that feeds our well. So just want that noted. That's very important.
Well, if you hadn't been here tonight because you had sent the letter in the packet, we were going to mention that, for the record, that you had sent this
Okay,
letter.
thank you.
So you use that well, you don't have city water there?
Nope. They stopped, I think, at Jericho East, right?
No, well, it's a ways back.
Okay.
No, I would love to have town water if someone wanted to put it down.
It's actually city water for
Yes.
Shelburne Bay.
Yes,
So,
City water in the commercial zone would be a good thing.
right.
okay, wow, I saw that in your letter and I just assumed, oh, he's mentioning that, but I just assumed you had city water on top of that.
Right, because the commercial district has
Okay, thank
water.
you.
Water, not as
Right,
much.
so that's it for this proposal. Any comments on that?
Any further, Jim, please state your name for the record.
Hopefully you can hear me, Peter. I guess I'd like to say early on that I participated in the early meeting and I heard very specific feedback that said that the concept and the scope of the way this project was being approached was flawed. And that raceway needed to be added to the project And that the overland alternative was incredibly expensive and probably going to end up in court. And that there was major logistical problems proceeding on the north side. And here we are, as if we never had that meeting and that input was never presented. And I can't tell you how frustrating that is to see it happen again and again, where advisors say, well, we had a public meeting. We had a public meeting and the public feedback was given, and it was, from everything I've heard so far, totally ignored.
There are other proposals.
There are the pros. Thank you, Jim.
I suggest you,
Brian, your voice is soft.
I suggest you solve two problems with one solution, and that is we connect the Flynn's water to the town water system as you bring the water system all the way out to Riverside and put the path on top of it.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, Jim has suggested as much before. Okay, let's go on to another alternative.
Yeah, I haven't seen.
Okay, alternative 2 is an off 15 alignment utilizing a portion of Silly Hill and Raceway. And this would be a 10-foot wide gravel path that would generally follow the existing rail bed, which you can see in the lower right, the left side picture there. And then here's a typical section of roughly what it would look like. And again, I can show a larger image of this. Okay, so from this point back towards Griswold to the left of the page would be that same path to connect to the existing sidewalk, or potentially a narrow version based on what we've heard. But it would be a crosswalk here that could be enhanced with rapid flashing beacon or some other crosswalk enhancement, and a small section of sidewalk as a receiving area. And then it would utilize what are called advisory shoulders, which are these dotted lines. And I will show a better image of that after this slide. But essentially what it does is it allows a road that's not narrow enough to have dedicated bike lanes to share that space with vehicles by making one sort of narrower center lane where when vehicles are oncoming, they encroach out into the shoulders to pass each other, and then they work back to the center of the road. But cyclists get that nice bike lane to use. And this works on a road like this or Raceway because the traffic volumes and the speeds are low enough to accommodate this type of treatment. So again, I'll show a better picture of that on the next slide, but we get up to roughly here and there'd be a trailhead. Again, ignore any structures that show impact to them. That's not really the case. We're just trying to show the scale of what this path would look like from overhead. And unlike the last one, these are just assumed limits. This is not, we didn't use LiDAR. It's flat enough in the rail bed in most areas, is established enough where the impact is really going to be minimal in those well-established areas. So this is just going to show sort of the scale and what it looks like coming across. Mostly following the existing bed here until we get to the Bittersweet neighborhood. Here we've got some washout concerns, so we would propose either a bridge or some sort of a boardwalk that would be elevated above the washout area. Same thing here where there's a small stream crossing. Those could be dialed in during detailed design, but we included an estimate for those in the project's estimate. So continuing along. End up on Raceway, and again, it would be the advisory shoulders. Something to keep in mind is this would have to be paved, obviously, to paint lines on them. So that is something that would likely not be part of the bike ped project, but that the town could pursue separately. And then that would take folks up all the way into the Riverside Village. And then on my next slide, I can show what those advisory shoulders look like. You can see in the top left image, the truck can sort of encroach into the shoulder. There's no cyclist there. And then when no cyclists are present in the upper right image, the vehicles just sort of move over into those shoulders and then come back after they pass each other. And again, this only works on roads that have a low enough traffic volume. So in this case, we'd be proposing a 6-foot bicycle lane and a 12-foot center lane. And a 6-foot bicycle lane.
And where did it end on Raceway? I couldn't, was that a barn? I didn't.
No, it didn't. We were just showing it's going to be typical treatment all the way along Raceway until it gets to Jericho, to Riverside Village.
You don't have any more detail
Until-
on that? You had a lot of detail on Route
Yeah,
15,
okay.
but none on race.
Excuse me,
Catherine Stevens.
yeah. Thank you. It's hard for the minute taker to not know
Sorry.
who's speaking.
So the roadway doesn't actually change width at all. It would just be paved and there would be paint on it. There's no impacts outside of the roadway.
The roadway would be paved. That's kind of a minor detail.
That's, yeah,
Sorry, that was sarcastic.
that's okay.
So I have.
You didn't suggest the entirety of Raceway
No.
was to be paved. You had suggested that the section where
Right,
the path met Raceway to Riverside still wouldn't be paid as part of this project,
Right.
but it perhaps would make sense that it would then be paved and treated in a different manner.
Can I follow up with this? Where exactly does it connect to Raceway? Do you have a?
Sure.
Catherine, that's what I had just wondered too.
yeah.
Thanks. The devil's in the details, right?
Yeah.
And we don't have details.
I recognize that. Dean David.
Yeah.
Oh,
I recognize that.
So it starts before the bridge.
It starts before the first bridge, it looks like,
I
yeah.
suggested that it follow the river path along and come out just before the bridge, not go through the section of my field.
It certainly can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I said that right there where it starts, but you can see where the river turns right over on your left-hand side.
Yep.
And follow the river bed over through and come out just this side of Great Bay Road Bridge.
Yep, it certainly can.
Yeah, I'd rather have to stay out of it.
Sure, absolutely.
So it would end up going over the bridge, your bridge,
Start my property, go over the bridge and then the rest of the bridge.
and then go up past Foothills and
Yeah.
your house.
On the road.
Wow, that's quite a bit of Raceway left.
Peter Booth has his hand up if you.
Okay, Peter, we'll do Peter first and then Brian.
Yeah, I'm having a little trouble with I had envisioned, for folks who know where I live, right by Jolly, there's kind of behind Jolly, there's a railway path that I think Dave Villeneuve owns. And I had thought that this was coming out there. Is this for the farm? I'm having trouble with Raceway. Is this the farm that's right by the bridge on Raceway? Is that what we're coming in here?
Right, the first
Yeah.
bridge coming from
Yeah.
here.
So that's a full mile on Raceway. Because that
Right.
bridge
Yeah.
is a mile from the end of Raceway.
Yep.
Is there a reason that we're not staying, and I didn't see where the path cut off, but is there a reason that we're not staying on the path, the original rail trail that comes out right at 15?
You're trying to answer that question. It's all washed out. The river washed all of it out from my place up. Gone.
I couldn't quite hear that what someone said.
He said that the river has washed it all out.
Real path out all the way to the other side of where the abutment was up on David Building. Yeah, you need a long bridge.
Very long.
Yeah, it was.
Did you hear that, Peter?
Couldn't quite follow it. I couldn't, the railway path coming into 15 is right here, is in fine condition. It's was it washed out somewhere else? Is that what people were saying?
It's beyond that. Next, you go to the end of the runway.
Yeah.
And there's an abutment on the opposite side. From there, where Willow Creek meets, is all washed out all the way to my backyard.
Oh, okay. I got you. Yep. Thank you. That's a long way on Raceway, though, in my opinion, for a bike pedestrian path.
All right, Brian.
I would suggest, and I don't know whether you folks continued your own site visit or walkthrough.
But just on the other side of Dean's property across the bridge, you do have access through the Jericho Fire District #1 property. So that would get you a head start to take you off Raceway Road. There would be a small bridge over, I think it's Willow.
It'd probably be about a 200-foot bridge across Willow Creek to get to David Williams' property.
Right.
At least 200 foot. It's that big a speed.
No, I don't think it'd be 200 feet.
I've been down there and I believe it'd be at least 200 feet. Because you gotta have that far enough so the river don't flood it out. That whole field in the fire district, I've seen it look like a lake out there.
So
So we've seen a lot of water lately.
Well, no, I mean, years ago, it was up to almost my back porch.
Wow.
And it looked like a small lake out there. The
My
whole thing.
Yeah, my concern is that whole mile on Raceway. And
Yeah.
are you saying that when we looked at the yellow path, it appeared as though there was property being taken from homeowners and that the Raceway Road was being widened? But I'm hearing something different now.
Yeah, I apologize for the old graphic getting in there. The intent would be to pave Raceway and have it be on road only. We started looking at a path off the road and there was just too much impacts and it added something like another $1 million to this alternative. So to minimize those impacts and because the volumes are low enough, it seemed like a good candidate for an on-road facility, assuming that it can be paved.
So just so that I understand, in your most recent suggestion for plan, you would not widen Raceway, is that right?
Correct. It would be the 24. The 24 feet would just be paved and it would be allocated like that advisory shoulder that I showed an image of. So just dotted lines along the side of the road.
And again, the paved part would be from wherever the bed meets Raceway up across or up to the bridge, is that?
It would, if this treatment was going to work and if this alternative was going to meet the purpose and need of allowing riders and walkers of all abilities, the entirety would need to be paved up into Riverside Village.
I think you might find that if you pave Raceway that the volume of traffic might go up.
Yes, yes.
Dramatically.
Yes.
And the speeds may go up as well.
They might.
So the first proposal comes up with to a certain length, whatever it is, 2.5, 3 miles. This one, the path per se is much shorter than that because it relies on the state road.
It is.
So this project would by virtue of that be much smaller than the other.
Well, when we get to the cost alternatives,
Well,
see.
It's shorter.
you
doesn't mean
answered
cheaper.
the question in the chat.
Yeah, so I think we should, I'm okay with him answering this one, but I think with this much going on, it's hard to answer the chat. And so I would prefer that people raise their hand and ask the question if you're okay with that.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's hard the chat can be distracting and.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we done with this?
But
Jessica,
Question.
yes, Catherine.
Again, I didn't see the detail. We live on Raceway Road, as you might have figured out by now. And I can thank you very much for bringing up the fact that your traffic numbers and speed will disappear once that road is paved, if it's paved. So please throw that into the matrix. But I didn't see our house particularly, as we all are in this room, or many of us are in this room, concerned about our own property. Our house, it goes up a hill. And so does that mean you chop out and we have a cliff in front of, our driveway and we go down the driveway and up over the sidewalk?
Typically, when paving operations come through, they can feather out and put a little apron onto a driveway to smooth those transitions.
Yeah, this is more than a transition. It's like this.
Okay.
So if you're gonna take that as part of the sidewalk, you're flipping it down.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, there is no sidewalk proposed for Raceway. It would just be the on-road advisory shoulders.
It's on-road
Yeah, that's it.
shoulders. Okay, that I didn't understand, and I looked at what was sent out.
I know, and I apologize, that had a dog in it, and because we were considering a path there, but then we started looking at those impacts and the costs, and given that the volumes are low enough and they're well below the threshold for being able to use an advisory shoulder. And one thing to keep in mind about that is it is a traffic calming measure, having that narrow lane in the middle does tend to slow people down. So that might sort of offset the fact that it's paved somewhat.
So it's like the one on Stone Hollow, further down, where
Stone Hollow, they have
where the road splits the median and the.
No, that's a little bit, that's something that's a bit different. This is just me, yeah. Well, there's all kinds of traffic calmings, speed humps, radar feedback signs. But this one, having that narrow lane will tend to slow people down, especially as they approach oncoming cars.
So he was saying then that right before Davis Bridge, if you're on your bike and you're coming from the corners, you get off the bike path, you get on Raceway Road, which ideally would be paved, and then you go down Raceway Road to Jericho Market all the way. That's how you.
And that's where the car.
So it wouldn't affect your driveway, really.
Yes.
All right, Joe.
Just one question of clarification on the Raceway. So when you talk about paving, when you talk about paving Raceway, you're only talking about paving it from where the path meets Raceway to Riverside. You're not talking about from there back to Route 15, correct?
That would be up to the town because it would be sort of out of this project, but for this to work, at least our portion would need to be paved.
So again, so the concept of paving all the Raceway and traffic increasing might be subdued some by not doing that section, because then it's not useful to use or as useful, I guess. Okay, I just want that clarification.
That's how people on Skunk Hollow used to feel years ago.
Yeah.
The woman straight back has had her hand up probably.
Yes, thank you.
Krasinski, Griswold Street. I just had a question on the second plan.
Would you speak your name a little clearer for the?
Krasinski.
Oh, thank you, Betty.
Thank you. I'll stand up, maybe my voice will project better. So my question was on the crosswalk that originates at Griswold. Is it on the east side of the intersection or on the west side? That's the first one.
The one across, oh, I'm sorry, it would be on the west side. The one at Silly Hill, that crosses
No, at
15?
Griswold Street.
Oh, Griswold just crosses Griswold, so it goes
It
from
just
the
goes
east side.
across.
Across, yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't cross the road.
No, it does not. No.
Thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
Colleen has had her hand up as well.
Okay. Poor you. Poor fellow. All right. All right, so can we?
I have no idea if that's her identifying herself or.
It looks like it's a call-in user that does not have.
Oh,
No, that wasn't me. If you said Colleen, I did have my hand up, but my question got answered.
No, and I am a call in. That's why I'm trying to get through. I'm just calling in, so I don't have a way to raise my hand or anything.
All right, let's do the caller first and then Colleen. I mean, well, actually, I should do.
Colleen does no longer has a question.
Okay.
Her question was answered.
Okay, so we'll do the caller and then, I'm sorry for, yeah.
Sorry about that. My name is Stacy Jorshik and I do live on Raceway. This is a nice idea. I'm just curious, the traffic on Raceway for the numbers for 2022. I've lived here for 32 years and walking, running, biking, you take a risk when you're out there. So I would hate to see kids or older folks or even myself out there with now this new influx of being paved. How is the road going to be monitored now so that we don't have the speeding that happens with the name of Raceway?
Well, it's worth restating that the plan is not to go ahead with paving Raceway. This is just part and parcel of this particular option is something the select board would have to consider. And I have to say that I was approached recently within the last 3 weeks by somebody who really wanted Raceway paved, having nothing to do with this at all.
Right.
So just to let you know, there are people who feel the other.
Well, remember when we had the Raceway culvert, there were a lot of people who wanted it paved at that point.
But I have to agree with your concern because as somebody who's retired, I still fall back on the perspective I had when I worked with K-12 kids for all those years. And the standard for me is, would you send your 10 or 13-year-old kid in a section of roadway? And as we're listening to these alternatives, I'm imagining, okay, there you go, Johnny. You're a 10-year-old. Go over to Jericho Market. I don't know if I'd be doing this any of these yet. That's sort of where my radar comes from. But I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, I don't know if my point is whether it's paved or not. I will tell you that it not being paved may or may not be as good as being paved, because people have no depth perception of the side that they have to be on. And so if you're running or walking,
That's
nobody
true.
ever moves away from you. And so there are numerous times that you either have to move in somebody's yard, or if it's raining, you're splashed with mud. We have a church on this road where folks drive extremely fast to get to Mass. They drive extremely fast when they're leaving Mass. You know, we have people, so I don't know whether paving or not paving is an issue for me. It's more the fact that there is not a good protocol for being aware of people when they are on the road and either slowing down or moving over, and having more people who utilize this road, which is a great road to be on if you want to run or bike or whatever, but there still is a huge issue of it not being safe.
Thank you. And now your turn, sir. Will you speak?
I agree with it. I want to know about
Would you speak your name for the record, please?
Wendell Davis, and I live on Better Street and the new development.
Oh, yes.
Okay, I walk on Raceway and I agree with her. You gotta be real careful, be able to jump out of the road real quick. I'd like to name it Ticket Way or something, slow people down. But I have a question, if you could back up to Better Street. You said you were gonna put like a bridge there or walkway.
Oh, yeah. Sure, and again, it would be either a raised boardwalk, something that, you know, could be.
Burlington bike path.
Can we get rid of
Exactly.
the chat in the middle of the?
Or.
John, can you, oh, I'm sorry.
And where, because I'm sure you can know, they just did a short.
What's going on?
Browns River there.
Just
Yes.
click the minus
Okay,
button
so
up there.
they go right
so that we
into
can
the-
see.
So I'm sorry.
It's repairing your.
That's what I was trying to get in.
It, again, without survey and knowing exactly, because this image, it's likely not what it is today. So that, once everything got surveyed, that would be part of it. And as we'll see on the next slide, is going through some of that floodplain stuff and erosion would have to be part of that detailed design. So right now, we're just recognizing that we can't just run a path through there. It's going to have to be some sort of either a raised boardwalk or a bridge. And those details, if this one went forward, would be handled in detailed design.
Just looking at your screen here, the community has there's a common element septics where people who at the end of the cul-de-sac own septic systems there. Are you aware of that?
Yes, we are. And I think there's actually one you can sort of an indication here. And again, the intent would be to avoid that once it was surveyed in, but it's just all we have is the picture to work with in this case. But during detailed design, the goal would be to not impact any septic system.
Okay, my question again, if you're gonna build a bridge there, why don't you just go across the Browns River and then just go across the end and then up that big bridge? Or Davis Bridge, or whatever you find. On the side of the river.
That no longer follows the rail bed alignment, and the scope of this was to look at that rail bed alignment.
Rail bed doesn't exist.
Well, that's fair, but theoretically, it's still, that is where it
Go
is.
across, and I know there's a, across from me, there's a honey stand and all that. Is that his property, Dean's property or what?
Yes, you.
It is.
Yeah.
So, then the other thing.
For Dean.
And page.
Thank you. Good to move on?
Yes.
Okay,
Oh, wait, one more.
sure.
I had a question again, it's Hale Johnson from 118 Route 15. I don't know if you could follow up back to again the Griswold for the plan here.
Sure.
Oh, boy.
I understood you were explaining that you were proposing another crosswalk, probably just by Silly Hill Road, is that correct?
Are you talking about on alternative one on the 15 one or
Is
the
that the one we just reviewed?
four? Yes, that would be to get across Route 15 to Silly Hill Road.
Okay, are you aware of the amount of issues with traffic and close calls at that intersection?
Yeah.
So
To raise that as a safety concern for pedestrians.
sure.
So I would say that, just as a suggestion, that crossing more towards the flat, higher visibility section towards the west would be a safer alternative.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, back to the other ones, where we are in the matrix or.
Okay, yep, we're getting close here. Okay, so this is an evaluation matrix which shows the two side by side, sort of some of their impacts, their costs. And the important thing to note about these project costs is the top line is just strictly construction, and then the bottom line includes design, right-of-way, municipal project management, and construction inspections. And in terms of the color coding for this first block, it's how well it meets the purpose and need. And for the bottom block, it's sort of the level of impact. So green being the least, red being the most. So in terms of.
Want to make that bigger?
Yeah, I was.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, sure. I absolutely can. Is that better?
Oh, yeah, that's a lot better.
Okay, sorry about that. So in terms of purpose and need, they both do provide safe, comfortable pedestrian and cyclist connections. Some of the issues that were brought up tonight are why I colored it sort of yellow for the facilitate use by all age groups, experience levels and trips. Frankly, this is a challenging project area. So when you talk alternative one, you've got some narrowed sections where it's immediately adjacent to the road with a curve at a 50-mile-an-hour zone. So that's one of those areas that maybe not everybody's going to feel comfortable with. And same thing on alternative two, when you get to Raceway and even maybe Silly Hill, having potentially children or more vulnerable users on the roadway is absolutely a concern. However, both do improve overall safety compared to existing conditions, and they both do contribute to the town and regional bike networks. So for right-of-way, there's upwards of 50 impacted parcels. With alternative one would be likely some temporary and permanent easements. So that means both during construction and then to maintain the path after it's built. For the off alignment, there's more square footage of impact, but it's only to 6 properties. And it is an impact on much larger parcels. In terms of environmental, there will be wetland impacts on both, but with the off alignment, there will be more wetland impacts, and those will require some sort of permitting and mitigation. For cultural resources, there are some historic structures along 15, and having a path in front of that will trigger review by the State Historic Preservation Office, and they may have some input into what can and can't go in front of those properties. Whereas with the cross-country alternative, everywhere we are shortly on the rail bed would be considered previously disturbed, but where it becomes less clear to the eastern side of that, that may be deemed undisturbed land, and they might require a more intensive archaeological study. In terms of winter maintenance, everywhere that the on-road option has a 5-foot grass strip, there'd be plenty of space for snow to be stored, but those narrow sections would become an issue where you need to coordinate between the sidewalk plowing and the roadway plowing so that the snow wasn't just sort of going back and forth. For the path, it's obviously not an issue. It can just be pushed off the off alignment path. Utilities and drainage impacts, both would require, and I was getting at this a little bit earlier, both are going to require some level of modifying existing drains and culverts. That's just not something that's known until you get into the really deep details of design. And on the on-road option, there are some utility service poles that might need to be relocated, but those are generally much less of a big deal than the full line of utility poles, which is avoided. For floodplains, there could be some potential impacts near Browns River Bridge for the on-road alignment, and of course, with the off-road alignment, a lot of it runs right through the floodplain. So that means minimizing fill, likely a full hydraulic study would be required, and any impacts this path had to that floodplain would need to be mitigated. And likely multiple agency permitting as well for that. And finally, stormwater, both will require a construction general permit for the contractor to follow during construction, and then a operational permit for the town to maintain after, and there would need to be some treatment associated with that. So that is it for tonight's presentation. So we're going to take these comments, modify the alternatives as necessary, analyze them, and then we would come back at a future select board meeting and ask for endorsement of the preferred alternative. And keep in mind that doesn't obligate the town to do anything. It just means that if the town chooses to go forward with a grant, it's got that endorsement, which is a very important piece of that competitive grant. And then we'll finalize the report, and that should wrap up towards the end of August. Likely that whole process will be done.
Can you go back 2 slides?
Sure.
This figure here, this doesn't include the paving for the rest of Raceway.
That does not.
That's what I thought.
I have a question as well, similar to Wayne. I'm Steve Martano, I live on Silly Hill, not the impacted area. Do you do these estimates include anything like annual maintenance or anything like that? Okay, so that's something that will have, it's like maintenance costs related not only to snow removal, but also just general care, repair. Sure, says like particularly the one in the woods because
Just like all the other sidewalks in town.
right, exactly. So yeah, we could extrapolate what the other sidewalks cost and then figure out what this is on an annual basis, and that's another budget line item that we have to consider.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
thank you.
Well, thank you. Yes, sir.
Wetzel, just a question. Is this we gotta spend this money on this project or we don't get the money? I'm just curious. I mean, how many, we have an idea of how many people are gonna walk on this path a day? $3 million is a lot of money. And like you just discussed about upkeep, maintenance, I mean, seems like that's a fairly big burden on the taxpayers if there's gonna be 50 people using this thing, 100 people, I don't know, is there 1,000 people gonna use this thing? I see bikes go by my house every day, I get that, and everybody I think knows the risk that does that. I'm just curious, are we gonna really increase the number of bicycles and walkers and so on and so forth to justify this kind of money? Or is this grant, you need to build some kind of a recreation path or you don't get to spend the money?
Well, there's no money involved right now except what we for the study. That's all.
No, I get that. I'm just saying, so, okay, everybody, we study, we're gonna go path A or path B, whatever that ends up being.
And if it gets grant funded, then the town is obligated to maintain it, obviously. But the idea is, people have expressed more and more interest over the years of having much more of a pathway throughout the town to be much more walkable, to be much more able to be biked, use alternative transportation like biking and things like that, which is why we're looking at these different ways of approaching transportation within the community. That said, it doesn't mean it necessarily you're going to build it, but you really do need to know what would happen, what the idea would be if you did do it. And what we have found is that as these things are built, more and more people do use the sidewalks.
Okay, so we have done like some kind of a study and we've seen that this justifies the.
Susan Brzee has her hand up and I'm wondering if she might speak to this question.
Sure.
Yeah, just coincidentally, I had a similar comment, which is when you look at the criteria for the two alternatives and you think about the volume of users, alternative one allows lots of people to be on the sidewalk for a minute or 5 minutes to go from here to there. Whereas alternative two is more point to point. Like once you're on it, there's a certain distance where entering or exiting the pathway is not really that feasible. So not to say that I'm not expressing a preference for one or the other, but if one of the questions is about the number of people that can be serviced by the facility, they're not the same. They're actually the nature of the access to each of them is quite different. That was my first comment. My second comment is that in terms of VTrans and feasibility, the question that Joe Flynn asked, our grant request to CCRPC for this project did cite that we wanted this project to address some of the reasons why it was not previously funded. So we know that our previous design or our previous grant applications had weaknesses, and we did want the new proposals to address some of those weaknesses. And I know there was some research done about what the weaknesses were, but I would hope that we would be designing something to overcome the trans objections from before. So those are my two comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I see a hand. Would you?
Jane Flynn, I just wanted to know, has anybody looked at the north side of Route 15 and the impacts, is there less impacts on the north side of Route 15 than on the south side?
Yeah, that was looked at in the previous study, and it was not picked up for this one because there were safety concerns for pedestrians using it due to the more in and out traffic because of some of the businesses. So in terms of impacts, they're pretty equivalent overall. It's still a 2-mile path. Yeah.
Well, as my wife commented, when you said impact to businesses are on that side. And the ratio of how many businesses north to south, you know, if you have a path on the south side, you're gonna have more traffic going to the businesses. So I guess can you clarify what you mean by that?
Then it becomes an issue of, I think part of it too was to get the path in front of more houses so that people can access it without having to get across. So
what you're saying is an artery. So people come out of their houses, because there's more, supposedly there is slightly more residential homes on the south side than the north side. So you're saying is you have the ability to put more people on that path.
But more people crossing.
With more people crossing. So there's access to the path, but there's not useful access to points of interest. Is that?
Well, the study is to fill the gap between Jericho.
Oh, no, I'm saying,
so
I'm saying
yes.
The south is preferred because it'll bring more people on the path. But again, all the points of interest are on the other side. So I hope that's consideration, you know.
Sure.
We're gonna pick up people, as Susan said, we'll pick up more people on that side, but where are they going?
Well, they're gonna go to their friend's house, hopefully. They're gonna go to different parts of town. They're not yes, most of the businesses are on the other side, but there's a lot of, it's not the only point of destination.
Okay, so there's somebody else on.
Yeah, so we have a hand up from Lonnie Morse.
Okay.
Yes, good evening. I've reserved a couple comments and developed some questions as we've gone along here. So I just wanted to make sure I got a chance to get them in before we wrapped up here. Wanted to comment, one of the things I've been thinking about, and Ms. Brzee certainly enunciated it and brought it to the forefront of the questions this evening in usage of the path. I'm curious and have been curious for a while if any cost benefit analysis is going to be done, has been done, or thought of to compare the both paths suggested here, alternative 1 and alternative 2. Secondly, I wanted to comment that for quite a while now, I mean, I think back as far as 2015 or 16 during the first scoping study that has been published online, the alternative 1 was always a Route 15 iteration of a path between point A and point B. And alternative number 2 was always a path along the railroad bed. And that was the railroad bed in its entirety, not dumping onto Raceway Road. It went from Silly Hill Road along the old railroad bed to Route 15 at Riverside. I've noticed just recently that alternative number 2, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Alternative number 2, within the last month, has been drafted by Stantec to show this now new, what I call new proposal to dump the old railroad bed onto Raceway Road at the bridge by the Dean Davis farm. And we haven't seen any further details about that. That has been discussed at length this evening. But wanted to point out for everybody, having lived here for over 30 years, that Raceway Road has always been a very rural dirt. Basically it started out as a farm road, I believe, and hasn't changed much since those times. We've heard the comments this evening about high speeds of traffic, concerns already about neighborhood kids that use that road or have to use that road for traveling from point A to point B. So I would be concerned about dumping now concentrated and advertised concentrated people on an advertised route onto this farm path dirt road that the town has never, ever been interested in paving for the 30 years that I've lived here. And now we're basically sharing the bike path with any motorists that have to use Raceway Road to traverse either on Raceway Road where they live, or to any of the arteries that are off of Raceway Road. We're basically sharing the town's bike path in our street. And I wanted to make sure everybody is aware from that cross-section detail that the gentleman from Stantec shared this evening. The cars would have the center of the road, a 12-foot section, and we have bicyclists on both sides of the road. So now if you have bicyclists on both sides and two cars trying to meet each other, as you can see from that bottom cross section, you're basically driving on the bike path with people who are trying to either bike, walk, jog, whatever they choose to do. So I'm concerned about that. And being that this new drawing from alternative number 2 just came out a month ago, June 19th, it's dated. I'm curious to know if all the people, I believe we call them stakeholders, have been made aware of this change to decide to make alternative number 2 traverse basically 3/4 of the length of Raceway.
Question for me, or? We discussed it as a project team, as the alternatives came together. That's what we decided to pursue. The project team did.
So how would we be making a decision tonight when you're just proposing alternative number 2?
We're not making a decision tonight.
That was on the agenda, but we've decided to.
I know it was on the agenda, but I announced it when the process started because the select board had not been given was not able to have the packet available to us to make an informed decision.
We haven't seen the packet before.
Yeah.
Right
So my point is, neither has anybody else that actually lives on
Right.
it.
Right.
Yes, that was also mentioned at the beginning.
That was also mentioned at the beginning, which is why we said we're not going to make any decisions tonight at all. This was just a process to familiarize people with what current status is and to take comment again from the public.
That's right. So I guess anybody that has been following the project since February or before does not think this project is going on Raceway Road unless they have jumped onto the website within the last week or month, whatever date you want to choose. So I'm just curious to make sure everybody has a chance to be made aware so that now these people can also make comment who might have concerns.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And the last point is the gentleman from Stantec in the cost analysis, or the costs of alternative number 1 and alternative number 2, just to be clear with everybody, that is no paving, no line striping, no ditching, no upgrades to Raceway Road whatsoever. And on top of paving, you would essentially have to rebuild Raceway, as the town has been investigating over the last year or so, similar to what happened with Skunk Hollow before you invest the money to put pavement on this old farm path. So I think that should be included in the synopsis of project costs, that in order to line stripe Raceway to designate bike paths where you're dumping everybody onto Raceway from the old railroad bed, that paving and sub base gravel costs should also be included in that project cost synopsis.
We wouldn't be able to have those kind of numbers without doing another study, but it certainly will be taken into account that we would have to do these things. And if anybody was making those decisions.
Okay, I think that's a good estimate to have so that everybody's aware of what needs to be done before people travel on a Raceway in a safe manner.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's somebody in the back that hasn't spoken before.
Yeah, Lauren Montgomery Reinhardt. Sorry, I was thinking of the meeting. I just want to say we live up on Route 15 and we are.
Would you speak up louder? Because I think they're going to have trouble hearing you.
Sure thing. Lauren Montgomery Reinhardt, we live right up here on 15. We have concerns about the depth of this with sidewalks and grassy patches and everything, so really would put it basically on our front porch. So it's hard to buy into this when we don't see anything about reasonableness or which houses will be impacted. That's one thing. The second thing is we would love to see a curb in front of our house. We're 35 and frequently cars are going well over 35 in front of our house. So we think a curb would be great to slow things down and make it more safer and better for pedestrians.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Sabina has
now
hands up.
Sure, it's Steve Martano again. I guess I'm just curious, have we thought about the persona of who's going to use either of or both of these paths? Because what I see in front of me are two very different style and goal-oriented paths, right? One is recreational, it doesn't really get you anywhere. If you live on the bottom of Silly Hill, you're not gonna send Johnny to Jericho Market for milk and see him in 2 hours, right? But if you're looking at the Route 15 one and we're calling it an artery, I mean, a couple of things. I guess thinking about the persona of who these users are and who these local proponents are, because I see that and I see 50 properties impacted and that to me, and I'm not one of the affected parties, but I'm looking at that, I'm like, that's kind of a non-starter. And I'm also just curious, where are people going? Right? Are they going to their neighbor's house? I think that we're trying, many people, I won't say everybody, many people want to walk around or bike rather than take their car everywhere. But we're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. Jericho is not and will not be a walkable community if these two things exist tomorrow and they're all paid for. We're still not a walkable community. We have one grocery store and it's 10 minutes, at least 10 minutes for most people who live in town. So I'm not seeing the ROI and the return on investment here compared to the impact of so many properties and a cost that is very, very high. And I would be much more comfortable if we said, okay, this is the type of person that will be using it. This is how often they will be using it. And then you can actually put a dollar amount to the usage. And then maybe you could have a little bit more of a return on investment discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If there's.
Sabina has her hand up.
Sabina has her hand up. Okay. Sabina's on.
I just had a question for the Stantec engineer. When you put in an advisory shoulder, are there other secondary traffic calming measures that can be put in place in addition, or is the advisory shoulder considered a standalone traffic calming measure?
No, it does not need to be a standalone. There are plenty of others you could use, such as a radar feedback sign, potentially some sort of a speed hump. There are new pavement markings where you put the speed limit in red paint on the pavement, and those have been very effective. So there are lots of other things that could be done besides the advisory shoulder.
Does the actual shoulder ever get a paint treatment? I think like maybe in Williston, it's green.
Yes.
Areas.
Yes, it can. That would add a little cost, but it would further delineate that space is intended for cyclists and pedestrians. In fact, the image I showed shows the different colored shoulders, the one on the top right here.
Right, but now we own a paint machine, so we are ready for action. And I would just encourage anyone. I've been to other talks where advisory shoulders have been discussed in terms of bicycle and pedestrian transportation, and this kind of road treatment is really common in Europe and has been used in Europe for decades and decades. And so it's newer in the United States and less commonly used, but it is not like a random idea. It's well utilized and well studied and effective. So it seems weird to us, but if you really look into it, you can see that in many, many countries in Europe, it's very, very well used.
Right.
So
Thank you.
Thank you, Sabina.
no problem.
Let's wrap this up. We'll take two more questions then, because I see two hands up. All right, I'm going to go with, and then Jim will be last.
Okay, Will Wetzel again. So, can you back that same slide you just had with the raceway? I guess I didn't really understand on that. So you got a 5-foot bike path on both sides of the road?
Correct.
Is there a reason it has to be on both sides? Because maybe we just have one side. I mean, two bicycles, I would think could pass each other in 5 feet.
That would not be a recommended practice because you have potentially the outside rider running against traffic right next to traffic. So usually when you put them on the same side, it's called a cycle track and it would be separated by a curb.
Okay.
So that wouldn't be the preference for this particular, and the roadway would.
So it wouldn't be ideal, but it could work. It might alleviate some of the single lane traffic as Lonnie was talking about.
A cycle track could potentially work. It introduces a curb and then other potential drainage issues, but yes, it could potentially work.
And then it's the kind of secondary, are there any others in Vermont or anywhere near us?
Yes. Queen City Park Road was converted to this a few years ago. Yep.
Thank you.
And other communities have considered, and I think there might be one in Shelburne as well. So they're gaining in popularity because we have so many roads that fit this bill where it's just not wide enough to put bike lanes.
Yeah, they got the two.
Yeah, you got those low volumes and drivers adapt to it. They get used to it. You know, they want to be in the lane when they can be, and when they can't be, they slow down and they move over.
Jim?
Jim Carroll. I'd like to suggest that as we have these types of studies done, there's a lot of information coming out of the study and out of the public that identifies very significant problems with or without this project that are identified. And for example, high speed on both Raceway and on 15. So we know what collateral damage is. I like to call it collateral benefit, so that we, as part of this study, extract and define what the objectives are, which I think goes to the issue that you're talking about, and you define what the problems are that are adversely affecting life quality to all of these people, which includes noise, the tires. I stood out here last night, and the noise, because of the speed of the vehicles, the type of the treads that are on the tires, it's extremely unpleasant. Two, that the pedestrians, which we are encouraging here, are connected to the same road, whether they're speeding here or they're speeding farther out, they're still speeding. And I think that an enlightened traffic study being generated as a defined need from this project that says we need to do a study, because I can reasonably assure you that all of the things he's talking about, the pedestrian interface as you're going into the hardware with the turning cars, is also a problem with the turning cars on 15. I almost got rear-ended twice today on 15 trying to make a left-hand turn because the impatient people behind tried to go around on the side, and then a pickup truck decides, screw everybody, I'm gonna pass the turning car over the double line, floors it, and goes down. This is a totally unsafe life quality from beginning to end on our road, predominantly by people who are not citizens of the town. We're facilitating through traffic at a great hazard. And if we talk about $1 million or $2 million, how much is a kid worth? How much is our total dependence on always riding in the cars and filling the road?
But don't you think a road help? Don't you think a path helps that? Right now, kids are walking along the road. Yeah.
The point I'm trying to make is exactly that.
Okay.
You can't look at the cost of the path. You have to look at the true cost of what the alternative is, which is an adverse life quality, depreciates the whole grand list. And God forbid, and we've lost kids and people in this.
You're so animated. I thought you were arguing the other point. You got me lost.
You need to bring the speed, the volume of the traffic on Route 15 and Skunk Hollow down. And there's no reason for this project to not be delayed a bit and bring forth suggestions as a byproduct of this, what the traffic calming thinks that could be done to facilitate being able to do what it is that needs to be done, which are crosswalks across 15, traffic circles at the major conflicting vehicle intersections, and
curbs. These fussy lights out here, more of those, tell people to slow down.
Yeah,
and a walking path that goes right next to 15, right?
I mean, just imagine the trees that would be saved if actually accomplished something with one of these projects. Now, part of what you're hearing from me is that I can see the sunset of my own life, and I would like to see something done that allows us to be able to walk through the town ride a bike, do whatever, and I couldn't care less about facilitating through traffic for the garbage coming from Burlington to get to Coventry at 60 miles an hour, which is a hazard life quality to the people who live here. And to ignore and not have put the energy into refining the north side, which was defined in the last project, because the pedestrians that are in the conflict are also already there because they're trying to get in and out of the stores. So why doesn't this project generate recommendations as to how to make improvements to facilitate all this? Because then you could have a simple path connecting the few residences on the south side to get them to the crosswalk, and then put some traffic circles.
You know what?
Yeah.
I'm so glad to say you said
Right.
that. Because I've lived here, everybody's quoting how many years they lived here. I've lived here about 33 years myself, and I came here 10 years before that, the family. So all of us have credentials, that we know what we're talking about. But my plan from the get-go has been to connect these neighborhoods.
Right.
We've got neighborhoods like Griswold and other where nobody's driving there. It's safe for kids to ride. If we connected those neighborhoods, this was my contention 20 years ago. We don't need to build this 6-foot wide super highway, South Burlington style, down 15. We already have a way where you can wiggle through with your kid and on the back of the bike, and you get over to Jerry Hill and you get your stuff, and then you get back into the neighborhoods, and you're utilizing existing streets. Now, I've said this till I've been blue in the face. I've stopped saying it because people are like, well, you gotta have this path. It's gotta be official. We gotta have a lot of signs and curbs, and we already have neighborhoods that are practically, people do that. If you walk in these neighborhoods, if you live in the corners, I'm one of the poor people that live in the corners. If you live in the corners, you're taking these roads to get to neighbors, so you walk through the town forest. Oh my God, I'm in Starbird. Oh, I'm almost on Jericho East. Oh, if I could almost go to Orr Road. These things already exist, and they don't cost a nickel. So pardon me because this whole time I'm okay. Wayne, you haven't said this yet, but these neighborhoods exist, and kids use these things, and people run on these roads.
Yep.
And we already paid for these roads. So whereas I see the necessity, because one thread that's run through town plans for the last 25 years is we've got to connect our village centers. I mean, it's like a mantra, and everybody believes that. We want to be able to occasionally walk and do these things. And part and parcel of this reason for looking at this study is because we want to be able to go from the flats to the corners. And this was the big solution for doing that. So we're at a crossroads, but the whole time I'm pulling my hair out, like, if you live in the corners, you're already wiggling around and you're making your point from A to B, and all of this stuff's already paid for. So that's just my 2 cents worth.
I want to second what Wayne is. I've walked those trails, and I have.
I know who you are.
For years.
We need to have you state.
Tell us who you are.
We need you. We know who you are.
But
for the record.
For years, Wayne.
Yeah.
And when we built Jericho East, we created dedicated trails.
Oh, absolutely.
You could walk through there and come out at Cherry Hill or Dollar General. I mean, the trails are already there.
They're there and they're paid for. They're there.
You did that.
It's like no brainer to me, but whatever.
All right.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, everybody, for your input.
Thank you for all your input. We'll
We look forward to the.
I did make a suggestion that the end of this project be delayed to make sure that we do draw clear objectives, clear problems, and clear opportunities and clear potential benefits, so that the study does not end up in another dead file. And I'd like to ask, who is the owner of this project? Who's driving this bus on behalf of the citizens of Jericho?
It's a town project.
Yeah, it's a town project that comes out of the town plan.
But on whose job description is it hooked? Is it on yours?
What do you mean hooked?
Is there a project manager? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Well, it's a UPW project, so it's actually RPC is the.
No, but there needs to be a Jericho.
Well, when Linda came on, she looked at some.
She wasn't here when it started.
Right. Well, actually, she was part of this new process because she looked at, as you said, the shell plans. And saw that, we've talking about connectivity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and saw that we had not done anything and wondered why we hadn't followed up. And I said, Todd had tried multiple times to get grant funding for any one of these sections and was turned down by VTrans.
Thank you.
And so the idea was then to use the UPWP process to find out what, she checked to find out why it was turned down and thought, go ahead and use the UPW process to, actually start a process that maybe the site, these walkways can be funded by grant funding.
So I'd just like to suggest that I think there needs to be a designated authority to determine whether this project has met all of its goals, whether the opportunities and the feedback has been there, and determines that the project's at an end and everything's okay.
Well, there will be an end to the RPC and Stantec aspect to it, and then it comes back to the select board to make the final decision with the input of the public.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, Tom.
Thank you.
You're
Sean Johnson from Starboard Road. I wonder if I could ask a quick question. It's a little bit off topic, but did we have any road damage Sunday night from the flooding?
Milo White,
That was it.
that was it. We've been very lucky.
Been very lucky.
Our box isn't looking so great either.
I see a hand.
Hi, off topic, but just a quick question. Sue Richardson from Jericho Historical Society. I'm wondering how we can go about getting an update on the Riverbank project, because we haven't heard anything in months and we're very concerned with the rain and the flooding that's been going on, that this is going to continue to deteriorate.
Thank you. Yeah. There hasn't been much
Thank you for coming.
going on. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you for, there hasn't been much, Sue, at this point.
Thank you.
We've been waiting ourselves.
On what?
Well, they were waiting to, initially, we missed our opportunity with the low water level, shall we say, and then all the rain started. So they can't do anything with the water high like this. And so we were just waiting again. Yes, ma'am.
Pika Williams from Lee Hill Road. Who's monitoring the water level to determine when it's low enough? There's been an opportunity during the year, from what I understand.
Yeah, there was early on, and then it's John, you want to answer more.
You're talking about the mill now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, actually, we were supposed to move into public to be heard, so we're calling, we'll call this to be public to be heard then. These are things that are not on the agenda.
Yes.
So go for it.
Yeah, so what I can say is we're currently waiting to hear from Du Bois and King geotechnical engineers to determine whether the interface between the foundation and the bedrock will be able to sustain the work that had begun to stabilize the foundation. And they started off by removing 2 boulders last summer to drop the pool. And we have yet to get the feedback from their engineer and an independent engineer that we have on retainer to make that determination.
So they were supposed to move 5 boulders in total.
No,
never.
What I saw in the proposal I read.
No, I don't think so. There was never any proposal to actually move that many boulders because there was a potential to do so, but it all depended on how much they could get it down, with just moving the minimal. Because once you started moving too many boulders, then the state comes in and requires a more rigorous
permitting process.
Permitting
And
process.
Dubois and King is the one who said this,
Yes.
Said what?
that it would require a more rigorous process.
Oh, no, the state is the one that says the rigor.
That's the state water quality
Yeah, you have to have a rigorous permitting process if you're gonna move these kind of boulders. So we were able to do what we could, and it went down, and it gave what people were looking for, and then the rains came. You know, we had
So
that
again,
short,
who is watching for when it's okay to do this again?
Well, I monitor
yeah,
when I can. I communicate with the people who are conducting the geotechnical assessment.
it's all to the engineers that everybody's waiting on.
Do we know when the last time they were here and looked at it?
I had John Ashley from Du Bois and King here. I want to say early June.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the upshot of that?
So the upshot of that was he took photos, shared them with his engineers, and I've been waiting to hear about a site visit. Oh, gosh. I poke.
We poked all the time.
That's probably my number one responsibility and priority: poking, prodding, getting people to follow through on what they say they're going to do. Tough times out there in the building and engineering world. That is a problematic challenge, and there is a lot of work happening in the industry.
And we had to beg to even get that one bid, right?
Yeah,
Like we had
exactly.
to
We
completely redesign the project, to even get anyone to even bid on it. And even then it was only the one bidder. And so it's not like we can be like, oh, we'll just pick someone else. We're at their mercy. No one else will even consider it. So
Right.
what are you going to do? Right.
I mean, that's really what it was. I mean, and now the engineers are even more busy. Because, you know, the state's having to monitor, going through, assessing all the bridges
Right.
and all the roads and, you know, all the different
Impacted communities.
impacted communities.
What can we do to keep the line of communication open between the town and the historical society? Because we've had no communication from anybody with the town since last fall. So we're kind of sitting here left in the dark.
Well, I don't know. You can email me, call me. I can tell you. We're not keeping any secrets.
No.
But I also don't have time to reach out to people to give them up to the minute updates every time I contact someone, or
especially when there's no updates.
Yeah, there's really no,
especially since what?
There's no
Especially when
updates.
there's no updates.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
We've been waiting ourselves.
Assume when there's going to be significant work done or things are progressing, you will be contacted.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now,
I have a couple of things.
Yeah.
One, John, I thought you did a really nice job during the storm, keeping us informed on.
Oh, thanks.
And if that's the standard operating, then I think that's great. So thank you for taking the time to do that. And I think that's really important. We were very lucky that we didn't have much damage compared to our neighbors, some of our neighboring towns. And I'm just curious, Catherine, you mentioned, and thank you for your response when we emailed this week, that there is an emergency response plan. And I guess, where do we find that? How do we communicate that with the public? Because if we're having major issues like some of our neighboring towns have had, how do we communicate that in more real time? John's updates were great, but they're coming when Front Porch Forum was coming out. Is there anything that we need to be thinking about real time or anything like that?
Yeah, I can address that. I believe the local emergency management plan does exist on the website.
Okay.
And if the newly updated version, so we have to update the local emergency management plan annually. Actually, Christine, who is here representing CCRPC, she oversees that process with municipalities. I can go back and make sure that it's up there. We also have the all hazards mitigation plan,
right,
which also needs to be posted. That was redone
just last year.
That was redone in the past year as well. That's redone every 7 years.
Okay. We're getting crazy weather, so I'm just thinking how we as a town can be more proactive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the annual one lists, you know, the responsible parties and who's going to do what, you know, particularly, and it's Matt Champlin who does that, but there are people from the town who do different things as well.
And we also have some discussion with folks at 40th and Allen about possible collaboration, because they have incredible amount of facilities, ability to house people. Were that the case, we basically have gym floors as our option if it ever came to that. So those dialogues between the fire department, folks at the range and our team here are ongoing.
Okay, thank you. And then second thing, I wanted to talk just for a minute about the ARPA allocation.
Yeah.
I went through the minutes last time and I thought that those were great. Helping Deborah Ross Memorial Library with the HVAC, setting up the 9-hole disc golf course, all of the food shelf, everything, right? The painting machine. John, you talked about the furnace for the town building and
Yeah.
and maybe that could be that thing.
Yeah.
I want to just state for the record, I think that these are all great because the whole town is benefiting from it. And they're just projects that we need and equipment that will save us money in the long run.
Right.
So my question is really more for you, John, because you've been doing this a long time. You got a great perspective on this, right? Are there any town buildings or any infrastructure that we should be thinking about that, we have a 30-year roof on something, it's 26 years old, it looks okay, but we should replace it because otherwise we're going to be paying for it out of the town budget in 5 years. So are there any other capital improvements that we should be thinking about for the allocation of the ARPA money? Because in the last minutes, I think when you had asked, there's nobody here to talk about this, so I wanted to talk about it.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
And
That was my comment.
I would just jump in here and say, I have, we have concerns about the highway department building. We're about to put a furnace in it. We're about to put a furnace in a crappy
Old building,
drafty
yeah,
building.
yeah, it's going to.
So, that's our next, this thing, we're almost done paying for the most recent renovations on the town hall, a couple more years. We own the building that the town library's in.
And that's money going to be allocated to
And-
set aside for that because
Yeah,
they need to.
They're gonna need a little bit of money. But we are seriously looking at the highway department building and, what we can do. And, we've tried to make no secret that, we have considered maybe having a bond, a couple of years down the road to redo the highway department building whole hog.
Well, in
And-
fact, Brian talks about, actually better utilizing debt.
Yeah, unfortunately, money costs more now than it did a year ago.
Yeah.
But with these grants, I think that, because I've also seen things that are like, an individual or this smaller little neighborhood needs to do a wastewater retreatment or something like that. And from my perspective, I mean, if my mound system failed, I'm not calling the town, right? But we all need life support equipment, and Matt Chapman can identify what we need.
Yes.
We did.
Oh, yeah, they-
I
That's why they got 3 different grants.
Okay, that's really all that I had. I mean, keep
Well,
doing.
you mentioned the recreation committee.
Oh, that, yes.
So don't you want to start the committee up again then
I
yourself?
do not. So.
He's gonna back right away from that whole thing.
All right, so for anybody who doesn't, in 2017, the town finished this recreation study. Nobody wanted to volunteer on the committee and it sort of just never got legs, but the study's really robust, the study's really interesting, the study's really good. We have this ARPA money, we have an aging population. How, should we be looking at that study and coming up with anything there that we wanted to do, that we thought we should do? Particularly, I was thinking maybe because we have an aging population, something related to a program related to stretching, balance, things that we know that older individuals have balance issues and fall, and that leads to a whole host of other issues. It's something that we could be doing programmatically. We can invest these funds to support those in Jericho, the taxpayers in Jericho. What are we doing from a sports and recreation standpoint? Wayne, you made a great point in the email back to me. It also provides community. It also gets people that they don't feel isolated. They feel part of something bigger. I do not want to chair the committee, but I do want to call out that there are some good ideas in that study, right? So
Right.
I think
There are, yes.
I think
there are.
generally, you don't want to use the ARPA funds for what might be considered operational costs. So
Right.
if we, say we decided we were going to hire a part-time rec director, which I alluded to at one point, we were going to.
We actually, we had money there, yeah, that's what I said.
Okay, so we throw $25,000-$30,000 at it for a year or two, and then we got to come up with that money.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
So, I think we want to be cautious about that. But I, as a senior, have really been tracking what, Richmond has a great program. Richmond and Huntington and Bolton could have glommed together for seniors. And I do think there is a need to, the original notion, if you put together that email that you sent to, is let's list everything we already have, which is a bunch if you consider high school sports and then some other stuff, you start to come up with a list of things that
It's all
people
kinds
can
of
do.
stuff, yeah.
But I think ultimately you got to provide a little bit of programming, which, some people might have a difficulty with, but I think we're at that point. And again, my point to you, when I wrote back in that email, it's not just because wouldn't it be nice strangers, a community of strangers feels more dangerous. And we don't want that. So I think the rec, if we can just, somebody can step up, a couple people can step up and say, you know, let's kind of revive that. We would definitely support that whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, here's a perfect example, right? I drove by your house the other day because I'm friends with one of your neighbors. I am very conscious of the speed I'm driving there because my friends have little kids. And I know them, right? And so I'm very conscious of it. I know the people that live there. So there's a connection to it, right?
Right.
It solves so many other problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, absolutely.
So if you see other people who might be interested in picking this up, and Underhill has a group, they have a slightly different take on it, and it's broader for rec. You know, they might want to combine our efforts at some point, just like Richmond and Huntington did, and next thing you know, we have something going on.
Right, and what they've pretty much rely on volunteers, just like, you know, because even if we paid for somebody for part-time, it relies, a lot of these other communities rely on their volunteer committee, rec committee to support that person.
Yeah.
I'd like to go, oh, sorry, Catherine.
It's okay.
Didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, go.
I was just gonna say, I want to go on the record by saying that I enjoyed a free yoga class sponsored by our new Jericho Town Library director, Catherine Das. That was extraordinary. 20 neighbors doing yoga on the green on Sunday morning.
Wow.
Saturday morning.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You found a morning without rain.
It was fantastic. It was rain free, and it was actually much more loud than I would have expected.
Well, I mean, that is the nice thing, because both the Deborah Rawson and the town library have a lot of these different programs and do
Yeah,
provide.
they can fill a big gap. They can.
And then, you know, the programs that are at the community center and thank you.
Hi, Betty.
That are used have been not so much for seniors, like, you know, Zumba and things like that.
That's why I call it stretching and balance and things that are like, they really help. Right?
Oh, yeah. Silver
And it's not just seniors, though. It's 40 and 50-year-olds who don't have kids.
Yeah.
You know, they're just living here. And what's the venue for getting to know people? Well, we got the farmer's market and we got the harvest market, which is, you know,
coming up.
how all that happens. But yeah, your point's really well taken, Steve. We're
Yeah,
on the same page.
Yeah, we agree. I just tried to give you some of the background of what happened.
There's a lot of institutional knowledge. That's why I reached out before the meeting. I wanted to get caught up on that. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make a point on some of your comments. So I agree with Wayne about you don't want to hire somebody with the ARPA funds because then you sort of, you know, it's not really the design for it. I agree with a lot of what you're saying, though, about recreation and those types of things being a good use of that money because it's available to everyone, that type of thing. And especially your comments about the emergency stuff, right? Upgrading their equipment, getting a better radio relayer thing that we got them.
Yeah, we got three different grants for them. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I just want to make a point of contention about is I don't want to use ARPA funds to repair a roof that's, you know, I don't want to use it for general maintenance stuff because that's really not the design. You know, it really.
The design was COVID.
The design was for something transformational, like, right? Like once you got past you didn't have people directly impacted, and you know all those rules the way they were written. The intent of that money was you still got it, even if you weren't necessarily a community that was severely impacted. And so, you know, from my first days at the select board, that's what we've been talking about. And the one thing that I kept hearing is transformational. And, you know, to me, like, if it was a roof that you were never going to replace, and I guess, and then had an opportunity to, maybe, you know, so like the town garage, that's a great thing. I'm not saying that would be much bigger than what we have for you know, than what we have in there. But, so anyway, a lot of what you lined out, I agree with are good uses, but I think maintenance on something, pulling in the maintenance a little earlier, it doesn't, you know, I don't know about that.
Okay, I disagree with you on that, but that's okay. And I guess maybe there's a contentious statement, but I would be in favor if one of our neighboring towns that really got impacted by flooding needed something. I mean, I don't think Jericho did anything special to deserve that ARPA money other than exist during a time that was different than any other time.
Right, but we all got it. Every town got it. So if we use it foolishly, another town gets an advantage on us, right?
Yeah.
So we've got to use it smartly. So
look, my point is, if there's a neighboring town that really they need something, there's a project they allocated X and they're looking for matches or something like that, and I wouldn't be opposed to that because I think we need it all private citizens are stepping up, and I think municipal governments need to step up as well.
The town road crew is going to be assisting the road crew in Bolton
There you
next
go.
week.
Yeah, that's what we can do.
You and Adam, nice job.
Hear from the public. Too much stuff's going on. I've got a handout for you. I'd like to say 3 things and then give Glenn the opportunity to make a couple comments. This is derived from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns handbook for the select board, page 33 and 34. I think there's an opportunity in Jericho to have a different method of allowing people to speak to their governance in what you will find in here, and I don't think you're going to go through it all tonight, in what I would call a working session. I think we need to define the opportunity where a citizen can come and feel comfortable talking to governance without the intention of a vote, a decision, a deliberative session. But I'll use an example. Human resources. That is an executive session thing. As a citizen who's been here for many, many decades, I have not been asked at any point in time in the past 20 years, what is my input on a person who's being contracted? And I should have the opportunity, without fear of retribution, criticism, or liability, to be able to come to governance and feel comfortable sharing. I think you guys have the right to listen to what is said as a body, and I think you have the right to ask questions. I'm not saying that you make any statements. I'm saying that I see things that are potential liabilities. And if I come to a public meeting to share what I think is a liability, that goes on the record. And if it's not addressed, it becomes subsequent malfeasance that accelerates the liability of the town. So I'm encouraging you to take these 2 pages, just read them, and think through how in Jericho the citizens can have the opportunity to choose in a private manner to inform their elected officials. It'd be a lot easier if we had 5, because I could talk to 2. Then those 2 could go back to an executive session and talk to the 5.
But what's to stop you to go and then talk to 2 different ones? So, right, let's say it was
individually,
right? So that let's say there was the 5 of us 4 and you. So Steve could go talk to you 2. Then he could a day later talk to us 2.
Well,
and then a day later talk to us 2, right? And
number one, I don't think it's working. And I think trying to get to 3 people who are already overburdened and an administrator who may be actually involved. But we talk about things of capital, of finance, of law, of human resources, and liability. I think that we in Jericho could develop a methodology, a process by which people shared information that is relevant to all of those related areas that are exempt and eligible for executive session. And I think our democracy would function better. I think you would have more information with which to guide you. And just for example, I really love to give you feedback about contractors that are hired with poorly scoped projects that spend a lot of money. I have not seen contractors challenged in Jericho since Jennifer Murray took contractors to task and tried to get Todd to stop paying them so that they would listen to her as the project manager because she wasn't satisfied with the product that was done. And so just think about the collateral damage that can occur when you're trying to get something done if you don't have access to the executive function. And I'm going to stop there because Glenn has a subject that he'd like to share with you. I'm done.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Hi, Glenn Marion speaking. I just wanted to speak to you very briefly about the subject of extending North Main Street through to the street that goes up by Dollar General. This is a subject that's been brought up at the planning commission many times in the last 10 years.
That's correct.
It
Yeah,
was part of the
Yes,
yeah,
Du Bois and
Du
King.
Bois and King commercial
Right.
study 3 years ago. They recommended it. The homeowners association owns the 4 acres right at the end of North Main Street. They've put it on the market for sale. Now, if that gets sold and developed, somebody builds on it, it'll really be tough to go through.
is it the Jericho East Homeowners Association or a different one?
Pardon?
Is it the Jericho East Homeowners Association that's putting it up for
Yes,
sale?
they have put it on the market, 4 acres where the well was at the end of North Main.
Oh, okay.
And so.
Oh, I'm sorry to-
It seemed like now is the opportune time, if you're gonna do something, to do it. I have visited with the homeowner association and with David Villeneuve. And then I have a little piece of land that would be involved, and JD might be just a snibble too. We are open to talking with you about just personally, I'll give you the little bit of land I got. I don't know, and the others are very open to just say, I think they give you the land, build the road, make the connection. And so, but we need to sit down, 4 property owners and a representative from the select board and hammer out an agreement. And I think this is the opportune time. If you let it slip by and somebody builds, I don't know what, on that land, you're probably gonna lose that opportunity.
So I'm sorry, Glenn.
Because you could always take it by eminent domain, but it's.
Oh, that's a very terrible process.
Yeah.
So Glenn, I'm sorry, you're talking about extending it to where? I see where it ends here, extending it up to come out by Dollar General. Is that what you're talking about?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And just think about the acceleration of the type of issues that were discussed by people here tonight. If you created low impact entrance and exit into the commercial district, and you had, if you could defeat a lot of the criticisms with respect to the adverse effect on pedestrians and stuff. There's all types of cross benefits from creating a loop.
So what are you suggesting, Glenn, that perhaps somebody from the select board meet informally with
You tell me when you would like to meet, and I'll get the other 3 people. And together, I've talked with them and they're open to it. And we can sit down and have a discussion. And I just don't think you should go to a public meeting unless we're in agreement with what might happen.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine trying to hammer out an agreement with 30 people around, you know?
It's not easy, is it?
And not that I want to be private or do anything under the table, and you'll have to talk about it in public, I know. But we need to be talking about it in a uniform way.
Well, I would support having that informal meeting with some reps from the commercial district.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
Me too.
So maybe we can figure out who can be designated to do that. Either now or later or something, but.
Yeah, okay, well, just let me know.
Thank you,
We
Glenn.
are interested, the time is right.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
It is, and we should do it.
Yeah.
And I just, anyway.
thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
That's very thoughtful.
Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, I wanted to say it first, I really.
You wanted to say it 2 hours ago. Come on.
We do almost always start with public to be heard, but we just couldn't tonight.
But yeah, but they wanted to, do the Stantec first, and
Thank you.
thank you. Well, all righty, now we get to meet our new town librarian.
Oh, hi. So my name is Catherine Bass. I'm very excited.
And you're one of the few Catherine spelled the same way as mine.
Yes. Yeah, we have a very.
C. Catherine, not K. Catherine.
Yeah, and it's, without the Y's and all the other things in between.
Yeah.
It's a classic Catherine.
Yeah, I think it was my great grandmother's name. So definitely traditional.
Yeah, very.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thanks for allowing me to speak to you tonight. So the reason that I came was because.
Could you sit up here just so you're closer to that mic?
So the Jericho Town Library would like to have the pet parade on Saturday, 26th.
The 26th.
Yes,
So
and
the two fell off. Dropped a blow because it looked like it was August 6th.
oh no, okay, I should definitely fix that sandwich
Because
sign.
it was the 6th and then there was a 2 down below. As I drove by this afternoon.
Oh, no, it is supposed to be the 26th.
August 26th, okay.
And so we're asking permission to close a Jericho Center Circle. But my goal for the event is to impact neighbors and traffic flow as little as possible. So we don't want to close access to Bolger Hill Road, just to Jericho Center Circle in front of the library to the end of the loop.
Because sometimes it's easier if you can close Bolger Hill, but I know we've tried it, different ways in the past because the kids would when we moved it to the circle would actually all congregate in front of the church and then march down the circle, which meant it would be difficult for somebody to go to Bolger Hill.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm definitely open to your advice and feedback since I haven't even seen the pet parade before. So if you think it's better to close Bolger.
Well, actually go to MMCTV, and I think in the past they have videoed the pet parade.
If you have a slow night, yeah.
I do think that last year how they did it worked pretty well. That said, that was the only one I've ever attended, so I don't know if it worked better or worse than others, but that does mean Jim's gotta either stay put for a little while or stay out for a little while. One
I'll
of the
ride my motorcycle down through the community center. We can fix the bridge, the flood funds.
So, since you are a Bolger Hill resident, is it, can we go ahead and close Bolger Hill for an hour and have?
I think the important thing is communication, and that any one of us could literally say, if you think you have to go somewhere or come from somewhere, park in the community center, and one or more of us on Bolger Hill could drive you if you had a handicap and couldn't walk the mile, which is what it is. One of us could agree to be the Uber driver for nothing to drive back and forth.
You just want to drive that golf cart.
Yeah, that's
I
it.
don't bring my wife's because the battery is dead. And I haven't gotten it going, but it is, they could use one of the lawnmowers. But I think it's one of those things where we get a message out, welcome to Bolger Hills, ladder, lower level.
Yeah.
If we get something out and then we find out that somebody's just a big pain in the butt and they refuse to allow it to happen, then we'll deal with that. But I think generally that people would, if we gave them notice and gave them an alternative and made an offer to them, I would imagine people would cooperate.
I think so too, because people really do enjoy the pet parade. I mean, it's a community event. From all over Jericho, people come with their costumes and things like that.
It's fun.
Yeah.
And our new chocolate lab is really looking forward to it.
Oh, good.
Gonna put a costume on it?
And maybe we can get my granddaughter's horse over or two.
Because one year you had the horses over.
That different horses, she's progressing. We could have some jumping over park benches. That, anyway, so it's a community event. I think we want to make a celebration.
Yeah.
I certainly think that we could figure a way out.
Great.
I have an Uber driver guy that owes me 15 hours a month for the past year. And so if we could get him to sit there and drive up and down Bolger Hill Road.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that suggestion. I'll start communicating with people next week. So
It
that
would be
there's
really good if we had a Bolger Hill list that said, here's the people that need to be talked to.
That's true.
You also have Tom Dowd, who's on the board, who could be your oracle. Who can speak
That's
to
right.
his neighbors.
Exactly.
Oracle, Jim, I want to go on the record by saying I in fact said oracle.
And Barbara Adams is still in.
Yes,
Yeah.
she is.
So, so you do have board members that can contact folks on Bolger Hill and let them know.
Yeah.
And then when you post in Front Porch Forum, what you need to do is then let everybody who might be coming through know that Boulder Hill would close from X to X on such a day. And it's good to allow a little bit on either side of the event itself so that people, people know that they have to be out of there. And then the other thing is just, be in contact with John, and then who will, so that he can contact Adam to deal with the cones.
Great.
We did used to have a walkway that went from Boulder Hill Road to the community center that's gotten depreciated, and literally some of the short pipes that are left over from some of your projects and 15 minutes worth of work that could be reestablished so that people realize that, because moving people away from the intersection of Boulder Hill Road and the circle is a good idea.
Oh, it is, absolutely. Because
And this would be a great motivation.
So thank you for doing that. And just, the board largely assists you in determining programming. But I will say, I hope you keep in mind tonight this discussion about rec and possibilities, because I think there's a future for both libraries if there's programming that appeals to different age groups in town. As people read hard copies less and less, there's a whole nother role for the library to play, and that would be to pull some people in for activities of one sort or another, even if it's yoga or whatever it is. So I hope to keep that in mind as you're talking with the board.
Yeah.
Well, and what's interesting is both libraries have a phenomenal job with the
Yes.
younger kids.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, major programming with both of them, with younger kids.
Catherine, do we need a motion?
Yeah, we should make a motion that says it's more safe that way.
Sure. So I will make a motion that we approve the pet parade on August, it says here July 22nd.
Yeah, so we postponed the date
Okay.
because since I started so recently, I didn't have time to go through all of the correct measures, like meeting the select board and such to make things work for the 22nd.
That's fine. Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve the pet parade on August 26th, which includes utilizing that road around the Jericho Green, which would temporarily block off
Boulder Hill.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's
You
one
want a
other
second?
thing.
Oh, second.
There's one other thing that I wanted to mention about the pet
All those in
parade.
favor say aye.
Aye.
Now you can do it.
So one thing that I don't think that we've had in the past is a liability waiver. And I was reading about other community pet parades around the country, and it seems like there's a pretty standard boilerplate liability waiver that many places have participants.
You're part
fill
of,
out.
it would be part of the town
Okay,
because it's a town library.
okay.
And since there was a representative from the library, myself, the Jericho Community Center, the church, and residents, there is a pet parade, there is a use of the town green policy as well. And what we will, because the library, and I have talked to Barbara and she said that they had already done their annual permit for events on the green.
Yes.
But and I have talked to the VLCT passive in the past about pet parades, and they felt that was, as long as you keep the cats and dogs separate, it's safe. It's a safe thing.
Okay. So you don't feel that we need to push out a waiver to participants?
No.
Okay.
I mean, if in the past, I don't know if they've even, so you're asking for the folks to sign a waiver that, they're safe,
Yeah.
That's up to you. We've never asked them in the past. I don't think Gretchen ever did.
Sounds pretty onerous. If you can get a goat to sign a waiver,
Yeah.
write a book and send me photos.
That would be pretty impressive.
There is some good news that if you take your domestic pet to an event, your homeowner's policy, I believe, does in fact cover you. So like if my dog is not the type that's on the policy that says excluded, bites the goat.
Who kicks the kid?
That bites the chicken, that kicks the cat.
The chicken.
So I think maybe in your notice, you say that in effect, the participants are encouraged to understand that they are waiving. In other words, putting a notice out
Yes.
that says something that even though you don't have a signature, you're warning them that things are going on here.
Yeah.
And it just helps you when the liability lawyer, which is like an alligator, tries to bite in, and it just makes it slippery.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Good seeing you, Catherine.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right, been waiting a long time, Dave.
Before I start my role as Harvest Market, I wanted to make a comment about the ARPA funds. And my feeling is the best use of the ARPA funds for the whole town is to build a community kitchen or a certified kitchen, either added to an existing facility that the town has or build facility around that. And the purpose being that there's nothing more than food that brings people together of all ages. And in a recreation kind of setting, you have kids games and you have kids things, and you have adult things, and then you have senior
Different
citizens.
silos.
And so they're all getting together, but they're not getting together as a community, all ages and so forth. We at our church used to do a community dinner once a month before COVID. And what we found is it was a huge success in bringing all the ages together and providing food, which everybody wants, everybody needs. And it just brings community. And then when you get a bunch of people together, then you get a couple local kids to come in and play their guitars and sing. And then you get, your local comedian to come by and entertain. You get your local clown person to come by and be with the kids. And it blossoms from there, because once you have a group of people together, other things just happen and other things just.
Do you have an idea where because starting from scratch with a land and building stuff would be.
Right, so at the existing community hall, I've talked about, putting in a small kitchen like place.
In the center you're talking about?
The center, yeah. Where they could heat up food or, kind of pull together a potluck or something like that. But reasonably, the health department, doesn't really like that kind of approach. The health department wants you to have certified kitchens that, are healthy, so that you're not transporting, bad habits.
Because we couldn't begin to do something like Hardwick, because one, that's extraordinarily expensive to put together.
Right. So I'm looking at something that is a kitchen that provides opportunity for people to come in and cook, or inviting a group of people to come in and eat. So, it could be done as a fundraiser. It could be done, people could pull like at harvest time, people around the town could pull their food in and say, I'm going to donate this, I'm going to donate that. And we're going to pull together a meal and invite everybody to come and pay and participate in the meal. Or you could have a $5 a head meal or $10 a head meal, or a family for $15, or, there's all kinds of ways that you could try to fund something. But the point being is that it's hard to do something like that if you don't have the stoves, the refrigeration, ovens, and then a place to lay out the food.
Because I know there are two certified kitchens. I'm not sure where the one on Brown's Trace is. We wondered if you knew where it was, because there is one in Brown's Trace. The other one is, of course, Laurel Schoendine's kitchen is certified.
Not anymore. Because of her house shares the same septic system as her kitchen.
Yeah.
And the rules say that you have to have a separate septic.
Oh, boy. That makes it even more difficult.
Commercial kitchen. Well, that's the reason that, we're looking into something like this, but it doesn't have to be so grandiose. I mean, if you could just, this room is big enough to, to feed 20 people at a time. You have a couple of sessions. we had it, the basement of our church, United Church of Underhill,
See,
had 100 people come.
so you
in
can't even
2 hours.
certify your own kitchen then, can you?
No. So there is a law in the state of Vermont that a church can offer a 1 monthly meal out of an uncertified kitchen. And so we could do that once a month and not run into any problems with the health department. But once you go beyond that once a month piece, it becomes
Wow.
more of a challenge with dealing with the health department. So my point is that, recreation is great, but recreation can be very particular in who you're inviting at a particular time.
Yeah.
But if you have a food czar, cook who wants to, the things that keep us from continuing to do that at the United Church of Underhill is that it takes people.
Oh, sure does.
And it takes maybe, 5 people to get things rounded up and get everything going. We have the dishes, we have the ovens, we have the microwaves, we have the sinks and so forth.
Lots of freezers.
So, what's that?
I said lots of freezers.
Lots of freezers, yes. And so we can do that, but we don't have the people that are willing to do it every month over, especially since COVID is. So that's my recommendation, is that you can start formulating activities around food, and then you organically grow, because people are starting to get together and say, well, this is boring, all I'm doing is eating food. Well, what else could we do? Oh, we could do music, or we could do entertainment, or we could take the kids aside and do games for the kids, and then the adults get a chance to talk amongst themselves. But you also have, people, senior citizen age, parents with young kids, that don't want to cook that night, and they just bring everybody over and they share a meal. And the concept around food and cost is, we offered those meals for free, but you could make a donation. And people were very generous with their donations, and it funded itself. So it's just just something to think about. And, the problem isn't necessarily space. The problem is getting the food in the space. And so that requires that funding for kitchen kind of thing, and getting some people up and interested in helping getting it going. So that's just a.
Thank you.
Can I just offer you 2 comments? One, I've tried to encourage a kitchen as part of the Jericho Community Center for all the years we've been on the board. And it does have the septic capacity because it used to be school. There's a lot of hesitation, but that's the type of thing. But we also have had an offer of the donation of the Rivers' property. So when we do the strategic planning portion of our new town plan, which is coming up very soon, that this type of objective could be loudly broadcast on the town plan, that one of the community benefits that you have. I built the kitchen for Samosa Man for Chuck Lacey, who's the investor, and it's certainly not cheap. But if people know that you're going to do this, a lot of them are evolving through the machinery and getting bigger, newer stuff. You don't need everything brand new. And people will donate if you can get the vehicle, but you need to get the plan done. Right. You need to decide where it's going to be, who's going to drive the bus, and I think that's an opportunity.
And we are having these conversations at the food hub meetings, but there are a lot of ideas about how we want to present a food hub and whether we're have enough energy to pull together a big proposal for something that's huge, big facility, open facility with a couple of kitchens that support it for different various reasons.
They used to have one of those right near Ames on the Barry Montpelier Road in Berlin, where you could go with your produce that you made in your farm.
Right.
Do the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what Hardwick is do.
Those things are risky. Waterbury, but Mad River had a very great program going, and they had a freezer failure and lost millions of dollars of food and have to close because, so there's a lot of risk because there's a lot of things you have to take care of when you're talking about, food hub things. But if we're talking, I'd like to take it back a step and say, okay, I don't want to do a lot of really crazy things with food storage and food this, food that. But if I have a space that's available for people to come to offer up opportunities around food, then that's really what I would see as the first step in this whole process. And then we can see if there are more needs for for storage, long-term storage, and all those kinds of things that can be down the road. But initially, I think community building and what we're talking about around recreation, community building is where we need to be first. I think knowing your neighbor, bringing people together for good reasons. If you have a Mexican night or a Chinese night or a Mediterranean night, people will come. And, and if you make it affordable, more people will come. And if you make it free, everybody will come because who doesn't like free food, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can put a box at the end of the table and say, donations, and the people that can afford it, they pay donations. And we've seen success in that. So, but the kickoff point is, how do we, and what do those facilities look like? And, we have a community center. Community center can hold, 50 people at a time. That's a great model to start.
That would be a great place to invest some money.
My understanding is kind of tough to get a big enough piece, a kitchen piece in there to make that happen. I don't know what it would look like. But
Mary Jane Dickerson donated land that is now owned by the church that's in common with the community center. So it required the church, Mary Jane, and the community center to collaborate with the town as part of the plan. But either it could be done or it couldn't be done. But the raw elements are there to, and probably start with what I would call a reheating thing. Because I worked on that kitchen that was in Fairfax for Savid, which is the food in a bag, which is very big in Europe and served on trains and all that other stuff. So those types of kitchens, we had USDA approvals on these things, which is a big deal for interstate commerce. But I think that there's an opportunity with some thought to build a budget to get some collaboration. And I do warn you that I went back to the community center many years ago and started giving out candy on Halloween. And God, I triggered some of the church members that it was whatever the wrong type of people for certain types of religions, that how it all. So this pagans, whatever Halloween, pagan holiday. Yeah, pagan holiday. That was the word of expression. So I have not recovered from that abusive criticism.
I got that as a principal a couple of times. You have to get parents to literally, in one time in the Essex Junction, decorations on one side of the hall, because I was working at that point with somebody from the AG's office over Halloween decorations.
Oh, my God.
And we put them on one side of the building, and these couple of families were instructed that when you walk through the hall, you kids look this way. And it was just insane to be running a business like that. But that's what we had to do because the AG was right there making sure that but so I appreciate what you're saying.
All right. The Harvest Market, thank you for that moment. So Harvest Market is planned for in 2023 for September 23rd and 24th, which is the last full weekend in the month of September. This is our 49th edition of the Harvest Market.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, and so there are a few business pieces. One, we will be requesting a state highway access work permit to put up the no parking signs as we have done in the past. And there's a permit here that I sign and either, Catherine or someone from the select board signs, I'll send this into V-Trans and they'll approve or send back the permit because of whatever reason. And we'll resubmit. But basically this tells them that we want to put no parking signs up on the northwest side of Route 15 from the border of Underhill and Jericho down approximately to Jolly.
I'm gonna take that there.
The next thing is a signed document from the select board indicating awareness and approving to be included, approval of the harvest market to be included in the application for commercial assembly permit, which we have to do with the state police every year. And what I did for you is just put together a memorandum that says that all we would need is Catherine's John Hancock on this, or if you wanted to put it on letterhead or whatever works. And then what I do is I just put this in with that application for the permit as so that they understand that the town fathers know that there's, and mothers know that there is, the harvest market is going on these dates.
So do we need a motion for any of these, or are they all just
yes.
signatures?
Yeah, you should, it's always good to approve.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So I'll go through the.
No, I'll let you get through your list.
four
I would
things,
just-
and then so to go with that is the resolution for establishing traffic rules that was established in 2018. We'll just continue to use that so that you don't have to re-vote on that every year, but I'll also include that in the application for that. So that's to make you aware of that. And then the last thing is that in the past, the select board has approved funding for state police overtime to help us with the cost of the state police. The town of Jericho uses their funding, their source to the state police, and then the town of Underhill antes up 50%. I haven't met with the town of the Underhill Select Board yet to get their approval or not on 50% of that cost, but intend to. But I was hoping that we could have a vote on whether or not you'd be willing to fund 50% of the cost of the state police overtime for that. And typically
Using our contract.
runs around about $3,500 for the weekend. That's what we found. I don't know what the prices are this week.
These first three documents, they are also executed by Underhill as well?
They are. So I do a permit for V-Trans for them. They have to sign that. I asked them again for a memo notifying. They vote separately on parking signs. Most of the parking signs in Underhill go on the Underhill town roads, Park Street and those roads.
Right.
And just a small piece of Route 15. So they vote on that. So yes, they go through this whole thing as well with Underhill.
Eric, are you constructing a motion in your head?
I'm trying to figure out how to do it.
Well, maybe just do the 4 separate ones then.
Yeah.
Are you using ours?
Oh, I'm using a hybrid of the two and it never works well for me. I remember reading them all, but now I can't find them in my hard packet.
So I don't think we need to, well, I guess you do for number 2.
Yeah, there's the 4 right there.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one, you just want us to acknowledge that you can submit the permit. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
On your behalf.
All right. So I move that the select board approves the permit request to V-Trans for the harvest market.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. The next one is about requesting a signed document from the select board indicating awareness.
That's this document here.
Yep. So I'll make a motion that the select board approves the event of harvest market.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. I'll make a motion that the select board approves the no parking proclamation as adopted in 2018 for the harvest market.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And whoever's documenting the minutes, can we amend all of those to just include the dates of harvest market, which are the
23rd and 24th.
23rd and 24th.
September,
Thank you.
Which is on the top of that.
All right, thank you. And then the last motion would be, I make a motion that we approve the funding of the state police to help with traffic and policing during the harvest market.
And split those costs 50-50 with Underhill.
And split those costs 50-50 with Underhill.
Nice add-on, Wayne.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thanks for your work on Harvest Market.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I have a question. So it's the 49th
Yes,
year or the 49th one?
the 49th year. So we,
I'll take
so
my,
that includes 2020, which we canceled, but we did a online harvest market.
Okay.
For that. But what that brings up is that we are doing planning for the 50th anniversary. And we are looking at maybe something small with some signs and just information to something where we're going to be renting the Riverside Park and having a concert and fireworks and so
That's nice.
So we're interested if there is an interest in the town in being involved in any of that planning, and that means just we can present what our ideas are, and if there's any support for that event. It could mean funding, it could be other kinds of support. We're kind of in the early days, but I just wanted to put that out in front of you and for consideration, and then what I can do as we get some ideas on the table and we make some decisions on directions that we want to go, come back, give that presentation, and then you can decide at that point what kind of participation you want to have in that.
I think Steve's pretty interested in recreation stuff, so he'll
Yeah.
probably volunteer. The reason that I probably should publish this across the entire whatever, but what's interesting is I was born in, lived in Jericho since I was born, and I'm turning 49 this year. So it's like you guys started it for me.
That's right. That's right.
That's good. I think I caught it last year too, but it clicked more this year.
oh, that's pretty cool. Well, thank you. Dave.
But anyway, I love the harvest market. So thanks for doing
I
it.
have a heart for recreation. I have a degree from Springfield College.
Oh, yeah, I know that program.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm tired from the career that I had.
Yeah. It's only an hour a week. Don't worry.
That's what they said about Harvest Market. That's what they said about Harvest Crossing. That's
I bet they did.
Select board.
Now, before we close out, is there something we have to do with the state police? Do we have to let them know, or did Dave let them know, or how's that
What I
work?
do is get
You communicated with them.
and make sure that she's set with what she needs. Then I communicate with them for the scheduling.
Okay,
And then have them refer back to Paula, get it under the auspices of the town of Jericho. And then she then goes and rattles on Underhill's cage, I guess, to get the payment from them. If not, I'm not sure how that all
yeah,
turns.
that's what I'm less worried about, than dropping the ball and not letting the state police know. That's what it was.
Well, in fact, it's in the past too, the state police have notified enough times, try to put their own signs out outside the.
Yeah, and I think did we have a meeting last? Or did we go and put signs up together?
Because they have
Last
their
year.
little, flashy signs and then they put it up, traffic,
Right.
traffic,
So it has to go up 2 weeks in advance of the.
traffic.
And they've
traffic
done that
issues.
a couple of times. They haven't done it every year. It depends on their availability.
But it sounds like you have a notion of,
Yeah, so.
you're being in touch with Paula, and then the two of you is in touch with the state police, and okay.
So the permit that we do also has to include details on that we're having police security and that we're using the state police. And then they're saying, then they call me and say, well, who have you talked to? What have you done about that? So
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Next is there wasn't anything in the packet, but obviously you're talking about the review and consider the village center designation approval.
Yeah, so
Didn't we
this,
already do that?
yeah,
We just did it, right?
and I think Catherine had asked a question regarding I don't remember, honestly, Catherine, did you ask a question
I asked a
regarding
question about the truck,
Right.
Right.
but I don't remember about the village center designation approval.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where are we right now?
We're on the village center designation
Oh,
approval.
okay. I got totally sidetracked. The village center designation approval is going to happen at the next meeting. David
Okay.
White is exacting the
But
updated
My
village
question was, did
center.
we already do it? We already did this.
No, are you talking about the truck?
No, we're
Oh.
talking about the village.
Village center designation, we did it, because I remember picking on it.
I believe it was on the agenda. But again, David's the person who's exacting the recertification.
And so if we haven't done anything, then I guess
When was it on the agenda?
I don't know.
I don't see it here.
I'm just,
years ago, I guess.
Oh, okay, not in the last,
I mean, not a year ago.
No, I mean like,
the agenda.
I mean like months ago.
Months ago, yeah.
I'd have to go back and look. We might have discussed it or I might have brought it to you as a report out that we got a request to
I know we've talked about it.
recertify the designation and
Yeah.
that David would be conducting the application. Yeah.
Okay, well, it sounds like stay tuned.
Yeah.
Maybe we're
28,
coming in.
12, 28, 22.
So that's a long time ago.
Yep.
No wonder you couldn't find it.
Yeah.
7 months.
All right, anyway, so do we have to do it tonight or we
We
don't?
do not.
Okay,
It's been,
So it was
it's been postponed until next meeting
Mm.
on the 3rd.
okay, now the truck,
Now the truck. And this time she did take off the
the 50 grand.
50
Yes.
grand.
Okay. And here.
That made a
is-
big difference as
It did.
far as I was concerned.
I know.
Yes, that was a big,
And
you
happen to know that the rate actually dropped slightly in the interim.
See, because we delayed,
Yeah,
rates came down.
yeah.
Which isn't. I guess you can sign there as chair.
Well, first we have to
We have to
prove it.
prove it.
Oh, sorry. Getting ahead of
So
myself.
which one are we going with?
We're going with the
MSC.
MLC.
Is this to replace one of your trucks?
It is.
Yeah, we ordered the truck over a year
It's a
ago
Selectboard
and it
truck.
actually is coming in earlier than we thought. So we have to finance it now too.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yep.
So I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the truck, utilizing the MLC financing.
second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Could the minutes reflect that this is a dump truck with a plow and spreader? Thanks.
Yeah. Bye.
And John, do you have this, can you throw this document up about the final tax rates? So it's on the screen, just embedded into the table?
I'm not quite sure how I would do that, Wayne.
I
will admit,
I almost
I-
emailed you a hard time before.
Reading that,
Yeah, because that way, people,
Can see it.
Okay.
yeah.
I wish I had been
I
prepared.
should have
'Cause
emailed
Amy
this.
prepared the document. I'm not sure where she has it stored or
hang on, hold up. I have a soft copy that I can share.
you do.
You give me a minute to.
Great.
That's right, because you have the digital.
Nice having it.
Oh, was it attached to an email? That would be easy. enough.
Well, I mean, she sends out the whole packet to him all
Oh,
digitally.
right. Gotcha.
Because I'm spoiled. But did I
No, because
download
you're
it?
Not old.
That's right.
That's the real reason, but you were being very polite.
You really want me to drive my car? Go get this, which I'm just gonna try to find them. Oh, let's see. Oh, no. I'm locked up here. Hang on.
Did you
Yeah,
find
this
it?
isn't a trivial thing. So if you could just take a second and see if you could find that, that would be really great.
Just.
I apologize for not bringing it up today or.
No worries.
Okay. And we'll see. Almost there. Is this it? Okay, here we go. Let me share my screen.
I think the hope was that Brian was going to stick around too, if he could answer questions.
Who's Brian?
He's the town treasurer. He was up here.
Probably not since, Catherine was with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not it. Sorry.
It's right after that. Is that it?
This is it. No. This it?
Yep.
Oh, gosh. You got to make that bigger.
Wait. Whoa. There we go. And then.
I can even zoom in a little.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I spoke to Amy briefly about her and Brian figuring this out. And I just think it was really important to provide this document that shows the change in some of the different departments, if you will, as part of local government.
I have a question on one of the line items here.
Sure.
On the red mill, I know we voted on that item. Is that in perpetuity or is that our next?
That's for 10 years.
10 years. And where this is here, what, like 4 or 5? So
3.
that's it.
Yeah, it might be 4, but no more than that.
No.
It's not one of the. Okay.
It was the
Yeah,
year,
that's-
it was the year I ran that you did it.
And you haven't come up for reelection yet, then.
Not yet.
So.
So it's only 30, yeah.
And so what the rate is to come up to about $18,560 per year,
Mhm. Mhm.
which is why it's such an O number.
Yeah.
Oh. And the conservation tax rate was half a mil. Or 5% or mil, something like that.
That's another question. The fire department went up a lot. What is that? What do we attribute that to?
So we covered that at the budget, but they did have,
A lot of expenses.
there was a lot of expenses.
Truck issues.
Yeah. Equipment upgrades.
Yeah. Theirs went from, I forget. It was,
Oh, it was huge.
It was $100,000.
Yeah, it was a big
had
jump.
Like 25, yeah. Like,
They had a contract with Shelburne Rescue to get a channel for a dispatch channel
oh, right.
as well.
And that's right, because they had because before the state police did it for nominal.
Yep.
They had a lot of the gear that had to be tossed.
Right.
Year and
And then we still spent ARPA money too to.
Yeah, I know, I saw that, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, that paralleled a huge jump in Essex rescue too.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
that was in the budget, that really huge
it's
increase.
a separate thing, but
Yeah, they're not.
that was incorporated into the town budget. But it just goes to say that we're not all, the town government did not come in at that very high rate.
Thankfully,
If anything, we've come in at a very modest rate.
we tried very hard.
So if we could just scroll up to Madam Chair, you ready for the recommendation?
Yes.
I recommend that the town of Jericho adopt a general tax fund rate of 0.4177. We're gonna do these separately or just punch?
Put it together with the local agreement rate of 0.0043. And then,
Okay, so that's one motion.
yes.
Before I second that, which I certainly will, what's the local agreement rate again?
That's all the things we exempt. And so we have to add that back, because that's,
Are things that show up on separate on the bill?
no, we exempt like, the veterans get so
Oh,
much.
right. We talked about that at town meeting. Okay, yeah.
So much off and, you know, all the
Yeah, yeah,
different,
okay.
and so we have to add it back into our tax rate and that's spread over the rest of the
Right.
taxpayers.
Right. Okay, thank you. I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. And then we adopt, I make a motion, we adopt a UJFD rate of 0.0743
I
for
second.
FY 24.
I second that.
All those in favor say aye.
And then that we adopt a Deborah Rawson library rate of 0.0258 for FY 24.
I second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. And that lastly, we continue a 3% late filed homestead declaration penalty.
Second.
Well, we technically don't have to
Have to
do
approve
that,
that one.
but because that's, but
No
I'll
change.
agree, you know, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
But because I think that's the state rate.
Yeah.
'Cause,
Okay, now we go to these liquor licenses.
Yeah,
You all.
thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
Thanks
evening.
very much.
Bye, Steve.
Yeah, it's so disappointing that they've gone to that portal now because you don't get to know, you know, who's getting married. or,
Yeah.
or, you know, or, you know, whether it's, you know, having a wake or, you know, just a big 90th birthday party or something like that.
Yeah, that's where I kind of missed the death and the marriages and the babies used to be in here too.
Yeah, exactly.
So why don't I do one motion for all the Griffin riders and then I'll do one for
Yep.
waterfront? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so I will make a motion to approve the liquor license for Griffin Riders LLC at the Mansfield Barn for the following dates. July 1st, 23, July 1st, 23. What do you say when you're doing it post? Well, whatever.
Goes back to.
July 2nd, 23, July 8th of 23, August 5th of 23, and August 26th of 23.
I second that.
All those in favor say aye.
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 We'll make a motion to approve the liquor license for the Waterfront Yogurt and Sandwich Company, also at the Mansfield Barn, on July 29th of 23.
I second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Excellent, excellent. And now we have select board updates.
Who wants to go first?
I don't have any, I haven't done much select board stuff since the last select board meeting, so.
I don't have an update.
I will tell you that the RPC last night approved the FY 24 to 27 tip. And that includes the Browns River Bridge 15, and that's on the tip for FY 25, 26. So it's moving up a little bit. And the Skunk Hollow intersection is.
So that, there's gonna be a 5 or 7 year delay, and now they've shrunk that down. There was gonna be, we were gonna have to fix 15, Bridge 15, wait 5 or 7 years, and then we were gonna rebuild.
That's why we did, that's
Is
why
this the rebuild or is this the fix?
this is the brand new.
Okay, so it has been moved up.
Yeah, because we were going, that's why we spent the $190,000 structures grant to fix the bridge.
Right. But I thought we were gonna have to wait longer.
Catherine, can you repeat the timing?
It's in the tip for fiscal year 25, 26.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's significant
Yeah.
acceleration.
Yeah.
2 years, right? Or
3 years somewhere.
3 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. And in project development process is the Skunk Hollow Route 117 intersection, and that is dates to be determined, but this is the FY 24 to 27 tip.
I have a question about that one. It came up at a family party. Is there a way to look at what the proposal is for that? Because I know you had talked about a slip lane, but is there like a proposal that's?
They, years and years ago, I don't know how many years ago was it that we had the scoping study done on that? It was several years ago. There's a scoping study in Linda's office, now in Linda's office, it was Catherine's at the time. And there were multiple iterations, and our favorite was the roundabout, but they poo-pooed that right away.
Wait, you're talking about Skunk Hollow and River Road?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one we did years ago.
A roundabout? No, a slip lane.
No, first, one of the ones was a roundabout.
That's nuts.
And that's exactly, that's $6 million.
Crazy minds think alike, Wayne.
It was $6 million.
Roundabout there? That's crazy.
But there was multiple different, with different lanes, different, left turning, right turning, things like that. So that's there, but because we wanted it to be done during the reconstruction of 117, they said, nah, can't do that. But then they talked to people and they said, well, we can do this. We cut back. They cut back the corners.
Which they did that a little already, right?
Yeah. And that's, they said, but that's what we can do. So now they're going to go back and look at the process and do actually, who knows when, but because it's a to be determined.
So they don't have a proposal of what they're going to do right now?
No.
Okay.
No.
So I have a relative that lives on that corner, and as they look at the corner and figure out what they can do, they're struggling to come up with a way that doesn't end up eating into their living room,
Right.
because they're very close to 117. And,
Right.
So I mentioned the slip lane, that's what I'd heard. And they're like, well, where's it going to go? Because if you go too far this way, you're in the river, you go too far this way, you're in the bank. And so that only leaves
There's that big culvert right there, and that
culvert street.
Right.
So anyway, they were just interested. And so I said I would check to see if there was.
And most of the work would be
documented.
done on Skunk Hollow.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, there would be some, work on 117 because, as you said, the turning lane and there'd be passing.
Yeah.
But there would also be.
If I recall, it was primarily a realignment so that the intersection would be, the two roads would be much more perpendicular.
Right.
And there would be a slip lane into Essex.
Yeah.
Which would, when the intersection becomes more perpendicular, then you start to encroach on that big culvert
Right.
there on the left-hand side. So that was the.
And they were talking about having to change the culvert then and everything else. So, yeah.
So Catherine, what are we obligated to do by way of follow-up?
Nothing.
Okay,
It's in the tip.
gotcha.
It just needed to be in the tip to be in the stip.
But see,
And so you
in
get
order for
funding.
it to come more parallel, like, right, it would,
Yeah.
you gotta.
They cut right across that culvert. They would almost.
And they talked about having to deal with the culvert.
So they would come down here and then, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 'cause
that would be a
people-
weird spot to have an intersect. I mean, it would have to be going right under the. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it was a real challenge because they had multiple lanes for Skunk Hollow to make turns and things like that. But
Okay, cool. Thank
we
you.
have people who like roundabouts. It's
Oh, I love the roundabout. It's just there. It's just.
I can't imagine it there.
that's right. and then so that's from the RPC perspective. And then let's see, given on the weather on June 29th, there were not as many cars or people at the EV event for the Jericho Energy Task Force Underhill Energy Committee event. However, there were still several dozen people who looked at all the cars, talked to the owners, and a brand new Hyundai Ioniq was there.
Oh, they're pretty.
It was a very pretty car. Brand new, real white, shiny, nice smell to it. And then about a dozen people attended the presentation on EVs, charging, et cetera, by Drive Electric at the DR Mill afterwards. And if anybody wants to see it, it was recorded by MMC TV, so people can get information on the latest stuff from Drive Electric. And then the JETF and the Underhill Energy Committee were at the Jericho Farmers Market on the 13th, along with the DEI committee. And attendance was low. It was really quite down because of the threatening weather on Thursday. And then the wind meant we could not display the blower door, a big red, nice blower door. It was too bad. But they were afraid it was going to be a sale. And that would have helped attract attention. But the Underhill Energy Committee has scheduled their first pre-audit with the door to see whether those volunteers may need more training, but hope that as they learn more, members of the JETF can be trained as well in the future. And these would be free 2-hour pre-audits using blower doors, so people could get a real sense of what an audit could do for them. And it was free.
Cool. It's good.
So that's where we are. And I'm trying to sign up for the dog VLCT passive presentation. And I started it this morning and then had to talk to Paul. I said, do I?
You mean the webinar?
Yeah.
There's another one?
Yeah. Yep. I missed the first one because something came up, so I'm going to this one. And so that's where I am.
I'm gonna try to get at least one of those harvest markets, but I can't go just yet. It won't be till way into the month, but I am gonna go to one or two. You've gone to one?
I went to the farmer's market. Yeah, I was there with the DI committee, and as I said, it was a terrible day. And we.
It's when it started raining, right?
Oh, in fact, my bill was. I can't say that on television, but there was real concern about whether the farmer's market should be shut down earlier or not.
Oh, because of the storms.
Because of the storms.
Yeah.
The DEI committee and JETF and Bill came and helped. We broke down early and left, and it's a good thing we did because we went through. By the time we hit Brown's Trace, it was already starting really heavy. By the time we hit got through this into the center, it was coming down in sheets, and it came on our rain gauge. It was at that heavy rate. We had to sit in the car in the garage before we could get out.
Wow.
It came down at 19 inches per hour. Thank God it didn't last very long.
Wow.
Because that would have destroyed roads in that area. But it's also why that entrance into Nashville really is going to need to be put on Adam's list eventually, because it doesn't drain anymore, and and the huge potholes in the
I saw those.
the apron. So that's where I am.
So I've got a number of things to report out quickly. Relative to the flooding event and rain, not only were we extraordinarily fortunate, but I have been reminded of a couple things. One is the critical nature of the local emergency preparedness work and the communication between Matt and Adam and I primarily. Good news is we haven't been in a position where we've had to house people, but the question still lingers. If that day comes, and it came in a number of communities, we know where it would happen, but from an operational standpoint, still need to do work on the implementation part.
Yeah, because it's
and the mobilization part.
Because like what they did with the Bavarian stuff, it was the Red Cross mobilized about it.
Red Cross shelters are easy because the Red Cross is doing most of the work
brought
with
into the high school. At the very high schools, when the Red Cross brought in the stuff for the high school. To the high school.
So currently, Red Cross is acknowledged as a resource, but there's been no active engagement, conversation, and that's something that I want to attend to. And I've had some discussion with Matt, and again, reaching back out, getting back to the poking and prodding. We need to try to get some response from the folks at the firing range, because I think they would have a big stake in being able to help. They've got lots of resources. I think the other thing that became obvious, aside from we have some geographic benefits given where we're located. Not being in the Winooski River Valley, not being in the Lamoille River Valley, but being kind of perched in between. But also obvious is the fact that the town is committed significant funds to working on hydrologically connected roads, doing culvert upgrades, ditching, right sizing culverts, all that, effort over the course of the last handful of years is, I think, paying off.
I do too.
I thought about that too, when I thought about, our favorite road.
Yeah.
There was a lot of talk about those ditches. I bet those ditches.
I bet those ditches work pretty darn well.
Yep.
And when I go up Skunk Hollow, you look at those pretty aggressive ditching there. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's a pretty steep hill and
And
it's
it
still
wasn't a
there.
problem, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
And, also, related to the importance and value of that work is conversation that Wayne broached around the construction of a new town garage. We had a meeting with a consultant named Matt Young, who represents a consulting company that focuses specifically on construction of municipal garages. And his outfit is called Ascent. And we had kind of talked a little bit about the history to date behind both the need for the garage, some of the exploration that's happened. And he was, and Wayne, feel free to chime in. I thought he not only answered a lot of questions that we had about how to move forward, but he was also really emphatic about the need to start thinking about forwarding the schedule in which the town would, take on financing and look at capacity for financing.
He suggested, because I had mentioned as an attendee that, the select board was at least considering that we could do a major thing after this bond was paid for.
Or at least, weighing down,
And that was sort of, where as far as our thinking had gone. And he thought that was too far away. Now, he thought there was some issues with the building that needed to be attended to, and that was a long, if there was a completion date then of 2031 or whatever, 2030, he felt like the building needed to be redone before that. Now, he didn't come up with this list. Here's the 5 big concerns, but he strongly encouraged that the board think about moving up that timetable. I wasn't personally convinced because, as I said, he didn't provide, other than we know it's a crummy building. Okay, we all know that, crummy. But he didn't say, structurally, this is about to go or that's about to give. He just felt like we really needed to be.
Yeah, because we fixed those columns that were an issue.
Yeah.
And I
think John was going to make an overture to Brian to just say, what does it mean if we start this thing earlier? I don't know if you heard back from him or not.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, I know I'm not even sure you were on the board then, but, Todd had started thinking about doing, well, it's not a scoping study, but an assessment,
right.
And so that would be part of the, so he's going to come and do a presentation at the August 3rd meeting.
Oh, good.
So he'll provide an overview to you all as a board. Some of the things that he emphasized was protection of capital investments. We have a lot of machinery we have a lot of brand new machinery that, because there's no current housing for it, is going to be.
The hoses are sitting out in the winter time on these.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah. I mean,
so
don't worry about that myself.
So there's some, I think what he wants to bring to bear is some cost benefit thinking for all of us to consider, and to kind of highlight what from his perspective. And I think you probably heard this too, Wayne. He was talking about, there's some towns that have sort of the Cadillac and others that have the Toyota Corolla type garage. And probably what most municipalities functionally need is more of the Toyota Corolla. There's some very specific parts of the design, which he's also able to help with, which I think I found that to be kind of a welcomed idea. Should we choose to move in that direction, it's kind of a one-stop shopping. He'll do all the feasibility work out front. He'll present that. He'll give you options and opportunities for design. He can do architectural design, and even project manage.
Now, one of
depending
the
on-
things that came up during this conversation was the need to create kind of a line in the sand or some kind of marker that indicates the select board wants to now explore the options of the building, to maybe take a vote, to make it formal, like, okay, we're going to check, we're not voting to build. We're just going to vote to at least study and sort of prepare, whether it's a 6-year timeline, a 4-year timeline, or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's,
And I think especially with players changing, all of us here,
yep.
you know, by 2029, who knows? We need to kind of strengthen that so that the select board of 2029 or 2027 can say, you know, they took a vote back and blah, 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 and we were committed to moving this along. And at this, to this point, we've just had sort of general conversations and people said, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. But, you know, if we're going to start to do this, we probably should be a little more formal in the minutes to say, you know, then we can report at the next town meeting, you know, we decided we were really going to check this thing out.
Well,
And it
actually,
may be time to do that sooner if that's what we want to go ahead and check.
well, I think if if he presents, what the cost of a feasibility study would be, I mean, that's where you would start
Right.
and say, yeah, we approve spending the money to do this.
Yeah.
And because it's because it's critical infrastructure, there could be some chosen commitment of applying ARPA funds to that process. And that would be something that you'd want to jointly consider and approve. Yeah, so we'll keep you updated. I think it was beneficial to, get that perspective. And Adam was there, which was great. I think it was important for him to hear kind of what the long-term arc of getting from where we are now to getting a new building would look like, and what the critical basis to touch will be in the process.
I would hope we could save money on the new building by moving a furnace over there.
Right. Well, so
we did bring that up.
Yeah.
And he said it might not be, this was all very preliminary, but he said it might not be able to serve as the primary heater, but it could certainly serve as the backup heater.
Yeah. Well, so there's a
Just kind of
couple.
thinking off the top of his head.
Yeah, and it's not uncommon for garages nowadays to have radiant heat in the flooring.
Whoa.
Which Adam,
You mentioned that a couple of times. I was like, really? I
Well,
like that in my kitchen.
That would do.
Well, it's kind of interesting because
Put it in the house.
It's
amazing.
what we've discovered through the process of meeting with these heating contractors is what we have now in the garage is we have heat that comes out from the ceiling, somewhat pointed downhill, but warm air rises, it doesn't stink. Whereas
And
if
the
you have
ceiling's about 20 feet high. so it's
Exactly.
way up there.
And if you have radiant flooring, you're getting the heat directly from where it emanates and lives toward where you want it to move. And Adam talked about that specifically in regard to coming in with trucks that have dirt, sludge, snow on them.
Yeah.
Trying to get them dried off as fast as possible, get the salt off,
Yeah.
be able to wash them.
But how does that, I mean, I would think that over time that all that schmutz would wear out, damage the flooring enough that you're going to damage the radiant heating.
Well, they want to get it,
It's
so.
in cement, right?
Yeah, it's embedded in, it's embedded in cement, and they've got very
Good drains.
big drainage systems in each of the bays. Anyway, so while we're on the topic of heat, we have 2 heating contractors that we are expecting to have estimates from sometime in the next week. Paula has been in communication with Vermont Mechanical. They are suggesting at this point what would be basically a dual propane driven furnace, 2 side-by-side furnaces that would generate the appropriate BTUs. We'd have to switch from oil to propane. They would be able to have that system installed before the end of September. If we choose to contract with them.
And they'd be available to do that.
And they'd be available to do that. I had met with another contractor from Homans Associates, who is they provide the big hot dog units, the ones that are mounted in the corners and blow hot air, also propane driven. Their suggestion upon inspection today was to totally bypass the existing infrastructure for the ductwork. Even though he looked at it, he was like, that was installed really, really well, which is nice to know. And would not necessitate having to remove the old furnace. So I think we're going to potentially find ourselves in a scenario where we have a lot of cost benefit to do, not only in terms of total cost for installation work, but work ancillary to doing that installation. One primary piece of which would be to remove. If you replace the furnaces, they pretty much need to go where they are now, which would mean taking the big one out. The other system that they discussed today would completely bypass that. It would all be mounted units that would be modular. They'd be able to be moved when we did build another garage, which is a benefit that we may not be able to exact with the furnaces. So we're going to have some, I shouldn't say you are going to have some cost benefit decisions to make about.
And are they available for installation before October 1st or whatever?
Yep.
Huh, well, that's really good.
Yeah.
It's very good.
So, that's the update there. So when we have those in hand, the goal would be to bring those to you no later than the August 3rd meeting. Other updates. I think that's about it. Just to put it on your radar for our meeting on the 3rd as well, the DEI committee reached out. It was brought to their attention that sexual orientation wasn't included in the statement of inclusion that was approved earlier this summer.
I thought that they talked about that, but
even more interesting is the person from the state. I want to say his name is Bob Harnish, who reached out over and over again about checking in whether Jericho was doing this work and how we were progressing and what he could do to support. Apparently, it also doesn't appear on their statement.
Wow.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we'll have an amendment for you all to vote on the 3rd. It should be really brief.
I hope that's pro forma. I really do.
Yeah.
I really don't want to spend 45 minutes talking about that when we got plenty of other things that for tonight. We didn't get to the agenda till 8:30.
Yes, we do.
Crazy.
I think it'll be.
So I think the people who are involved in that, if they could be given the heads up, that this is pro forma, we're all on board probably.
Absolutely.
So let's just get it done.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. Oh, boy.
Great.
Thanks, John.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, can I do one more?
Sure.
Line painting on Old Pump. We have the machine. We have the ability to do the work. We need 3 days of dry weather in succession.
Good luck with that.
25.
Yeah. So,
25.
and then, so it may be, I think our original goal was to try to get that work underway sometime around now, early to mid-July. We're probably looking at first week of August, given other commitments of the road crew. And they may have to, depending on how work is aligning, they may have to have a crew do that at night. Could be some overtime involved, but we're getting closer.
That's terrific.
And I have to say to date, brief update by way of Palmer Lane Maple and Old Pump, they're Yeah, to my knowledge, and again, I think maybe some of it's related to weather. We just haven't had a lot of hot, sunny, ice cream eating type weather. But very, in comparison to last summer, yeah, in comparison to last summer, relatively few concerns or complaints that have at least been crossing my desk. I remember there were weeks when every Monday I could predict I'd get a pile of photos about strange parking scenarios, safety concerns. So we're moving down the road there as fast as we can.
By the way, that Lee River thing, lickety split. I can't believe how quickly that
I know.
over.
They really.
Oh, yeah.
That road must have been closed maybe 24 or 36 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, now they have to go back and close it again when they pave it again.
Sure.
Amazing how fast that work was done.
They did a really good job. Yeah, I mean, considering.
I like the one night that it was closed though, because I could sit on the back porch and watch the Red Sox game with the window open. Because the traffic, to these comments, the traffic on Lee River is crazy.
Yeah.
And I talked to my daughter-in-law because they live on Plains Road. She said, what's going on? Because there's been an awful lot of traffic on Plains Road. Most people are driving like crazy. So what they did was they just went on Plains Road. But it's so funny, but it was so nice.
And people
and
do
quiet.
drive like
It
crazy.
was so wonderful.
Well, it's like when
You
they
never get that where you are.
No, but they closed 117 at my road, so you couldn't. So if you're coming from Essex, you had to stop or turn around.
Turn around.
Oh,
Right.
Most of them turned around in my driveway, which was great. But it was just nice to like that 117 was much quieter. So like, yeah, we had more traffic turning around in our driveway, but less traffic overall. So I could like walk down the middle of the road and.
Wow.
And Eric, coincidentally, so after that accident happened,
Yes.
and the concern that you had brought up around roadside mowing that hadn't been completed yet.
Well, that would have been a good select board update. I should.
It was all coincidental. I had reached out to Alicia Kane, who's the AOT director.
Yeah.
Just to ask and inquire where are we with roadside mowing on the state highways. And before I got an answer back from her, I drove by and it had already been done.
Yeah. So I emailed, yeah. So what he's talking about is there was another accident down there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was probably, I don't know, 4 weeks ago now, something like that.
Maybe not even.
And, you know, the fire department came and whatever. I didn't see how it happened. It's hard for me to, based on where the cars ended up afterwards, it's hard to imagine exactly what happened. But if you're not in an SUV and you get to the end of Barber Farm Road and you're looking to turn right or left onto 117, you know, the grass was so high that you couldn't see. Like in my truck, I'm good. I can basically tell, but I can imagine being just a few inches shorter. And sure enough, the car that got hit was shorter. I'm not saying 100% it was because of that. So when Matt came down, I'm like, Matt, I really think it's the mowing. And so I emailed VTrans, but I also emailed John.
Oh, you emailed them too?
Yeah.
Oh, did you get a response?
No.
Oh, interesting.
No. But I emailed John and Adam and I just said, hey, I just emailed them, but you know, might need more coming from you guys. And they did mow within the next week. So it was good.
There's been some nasty accidents down at that.
Oh, it's awful. I mean,
yeah,
it's to the point where we start to expect it. Like my wife and kids were away and I got out of the shower, for whatever reason, showered in the afternoon, and like the dog was acting up. And then I heard a voice and I happened to know the neighbors were gone. So I'm like, oh, there's an accident. I could just tell. It was just somebody walking from, and like it's that common that it's just, oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And the near misses are just as common too. We'll hear like the screech and then you're like, you brace.
I'll hold your breath.
You brace like, oh, nothing. We're good. And then, you know, then you hear some honking and swearing and stuff, but
awful.
Yeah.
That is awful. Just awful.
But yeah, I appreciate your help on that. Yeah. I don't know that it mattered, but it was
nice to know that it was on somebody's, priority list and was attended to.
So we have warrants then.
I signed.
And the minutes of 6:15.
Yep.
Now, I noticed 2 corrections already in the minutes before we even got them.
Oh boy.
I noticed that too. And
So were those already recognized or do we have to?
Those
or do we?
were, Oh, wait.
Or should we
Oh,
go
no,
ahead
sorry.
and mention them in the,
I actually have a question about that. When I saw that correction, it dawned on me a little bit to ask sort of a procedural question, maybe a how we should do it question.
Oh, you know what?
Should
Okay,
the minutes reflect what was said, or should they reflect what was right? So let's say I'm completely hypothetical. Let's say I misspoke at the last select board meeting and I said the year 2021 and I meant the year 2022. And so we're doing the minutes and you see like, oh, he said 2021, but he should have said 2022. What do we do? And I'm only asking because out of procedure, like, because you want them to be accurate, but you
Yes.
also want them to it should also reflect what was said.
Yeah,
Right.
because that's kind of a clerical example.
that's
Yeah,
clear,
But what
right?
if, oh, Eric said this, and then the person who's figuring out, but you know, he kind of meant this other thing.
No.
That's not okay.
Yeah.
Clerical, you change because you really want it to be correct. But if you.
But what if someone was there and and so the one reason I'm getting hung up on this.
I remember you said June of
Yeah,
23.
and so, and that's what I'm wondering, and what I'm thinking about, and I've worked with healthcare records for 14, 15 years. There's a very specific way, like if a doctor says, oh, you know, Wayne gave birth to a kid, you know, like, oh gosh, that's wrong. But there's a very specific way you can't just go and just, oh, that problem shouldn't exist, delete it. It has to be there because somebody could have made a decision based on that, right? So,
Right.
so I thought I saw that and I'm like, should it reflect what was said accurately or should it be accurate? Anyway,
It all depends.
yeah,
It's an all depends.
I would think it needs to be accurate to what was said, and then it's the select board's responsibility to make sure it was correct.
somehow you would
Oh,
correct
yeah,
and say,
I mean, because when it's said, you know, because usually if you're changing the meaning of something, then that's very important to recognize
yeah.
that either the minutes.
Certainly, if they document what was said wrong, that's easy.
Yeah.
But like if one of us said the wrong thing, but we clearly meant the other, I don't know if it's okay to just go and change that because somebody might be like, I took issue with that and now I can't find it, you know?
Yeah,
Right. I mean, which is
and
why.
there's no record that it was corrected on purpose.
Right.
So was it deceptive that it was changed that way? Or
Right.
was
Which is
somebody-
why we talk about it
Yeah.
this way,
yeah,
because then it recognizes that,
Transparency.
happens
Yeah.
in daylight.
Okay.
yeah. But you know, if it's, you know, like the one where we were, you know, one of the minutes had, you know, let's say June 31st, you know, 2020, we'd say, well, that's
Right.
incorrect.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But anyway, I've noted, so I figured I didn't know if it was already noted, but I'm going to note in our minutes discussion that line 29 was changed. Or, you know, something like that, because it's changed on us. But anyway, it was line 29 had initially had 22 accidents, but obviously when people went over the minutes from looking at the video, there were only 2 accidents involved, alcohol. Because I don't think there were 22 accidents.
No.
And then the other one that was changed like that, before we looked at the minutes, was on line 281, where this is a major, that would scare the bejesus out of people, because it is a major change where the minutes say 5 additional units, but it was corrected before we even got it to say 5 additional bedrooms.
Correct.
So who did that?
I think that's Paula's rating. And
Because I know she, she corrects some of that stuff that it's really, you know, before it even gets to us a lot of times. This is the first time.
Yeah.
We've
Whoever
actually
did
done,
it, nice job, nice catch.
yeah,
Yeah,
because people would be very upset about that.
because we discussed that.
Yeah. So anyway, for me, it's line 31. I think it's because we share the transcriber, because it says about 29.7% of the day is covered by police in Underhill. It should, I suspect we're talking about Jericho because there's another one like that
Yeah,
on line 151 where Wayne is talking and he said something talked about for Underhill, but I'm sure he's talking about Jericho.
Did you say 151, Catherine?
Yes, 150.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
And then we have our usual come out of executive session, and I cannot find I know it was written down, but I can't find my actual notes. But I think it was around 10 o'clock.
Much remember you were writing it down.
I did, and I'm usually on one of these sheets of paper. I think I used the tablet for something else and can't find it. Because I use it for the RPC too, and sometimes I get these little weird messages. I go, where did that one come from?
John, here's this thing.
Oh, thank you.
So I don't know if it was 10:30 or
It was very late.
it was very late, but we don't usually go past even 10:30.
No, I think we were coming out somewhere around 10:15 or so, and then adjourned shortly thereafter. Because I know I was home before 11. That's all I remember. But we could either put approximate numbers, or I could go home and search my tablets.
I mean, I think 10:30.
10:30, okay.
I said, I vaguely remember.
Yeah, I remember getting home just like 20 to 11 or quarter to 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Motion to enter into executive session because for reasons of personnel and legal, because premature disclosure of information would be detrimental.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Good night, everybody.
Good night, y'all.
Good night, Irene.
9:52. Well, no, it's
9:55.
9:55.